pardoned former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez and let him out of prison, even though he was convicted in a massive international drug trafficking scheme. How is that zero tolerance on drug trafficking?
Well, I don't know him, and I know very little about him, other than people said it was like a Obama-Biden type setup, where he was set up. He was the president of the country. The country deals in drugs like probably you could say that about every country. And because he was the president, they gave him like 45 years in prison. And there are many people fighting for Honduras, very good people that I know, and they think he was treated horribly, and they asked me to do it, and I said, I'll do it.
It starts with a simple question and ends in objective reality. Through our journey from there to here, we find one another and ourselves. And as the next 24 hours breaks free from our last, we gaze onward in reflection of the day.
Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up.
Wednesday, December 10th, 2025. That's quite a clip. Hopefully you guys are right there with me if you've been following the shows. At the very least, understand where I'm coming from around the topic of the network state conversation, Prospera in particular, which is what caught my attention first. It's much larger than that, but that's what I first picked up on. The overlap with Honduras, obviously Prospera being in Honduras, and the discussion that we've had along that. One of the parts being the prediction, just based on really more so what the current, as I think at the moment still current, but about to be previous president of the country said, I think a year and a half ago or about a year ago, that the U.S. government was trying to regime change your country. And we've seen the election manipulation that the U.S. government, I guess, does a lot. I was going to say, it's pretty clear, it's pretty obvious that it's happening around the world. But the point is that this was something that we predicted would come to pass. And not because of, there's plenty of reasons I would argue this is probably going on. But the reason I saw it coming, predicted, was because Peter Thiel, Pronomos Capital, Mark Andreessen-backed Prospera was in a limbo state. They had ruled it unconstitutional post-2022. They were trying to make it leave. The country doesn't want it there anymore. And they just waited. They sued. And they've even continued to build since then. And I think they were waiting until this was coming to pass. So what his comments were, right in that opening clip, if you didn't see the last show, was around Orlando Hernandez, who was the president who left in 2022 and was put to jail for 400 to 500 tons of cocaine charged in the United States. And he pardoned him. He was the one who allowed Prospera to become a thing, was the one that illegally allowed it to take place, manipulating with the Supreme Court. Remember, the illegal regime change in 2009 from the U.S. government was allowed this to be there in the first place. And so this was all part of this same conversation. So back to the clip, the opening clip there, for him to say that he doesn't know who he is, first of all, is a lie. That's just, he is somebody who's been around this conversation and in his circle. He's been pro-Trump. We'll get into it. But the statement at face value is insane to me. You're saying that you don't know who he is, but you pardoned him? There's only one way to take that. I think he's somewhat being dishonest, but what he's saying, taken at face value, is I pardoned the guy because these rich people who backed me told me to. Peter Thiel is who we're talking about. And I think Roger Stone and a couple overlaps, who, by the way, surprise, surprise, are shockingly obsessed and supporting Prospera and the network state and the reimagining of our society, which is what this is about, guys. This is the Great Reset. We're watching them continue the same agenda, and it's not even, it's barely different window dressing. You get different partisan flair, and it's the same outcome. The same digital IDs, the same digital money, the same transition into everything we talked about and pushed back on alongside the Republicans at the time with the Great Reset and COVID-19 and all of the things that we saw building and have never even slowed down. The transition of power, I guess the illusion of it, the transition of people in front of you in the U.S. government structure have allowed people to act like something's different. We all hoped that things would be different. But aside from even the conversation I'm having now, Republicans, I hope we can all see that I was very clearly highlighting before most were talking about it, are unhappy with what's happening, which is very obvious and easy to see. He's not meeting the demand. He's not following through on his promises, but no, neither did Biden, neither did Bush or Obama. And we have to start being less childish about the party paradigm and highlight those who are blindly supporting of it. But the point is that this is a transition. And that's not even being, better way to say that is that's not secret. That's being discussed. You get the conversations like Mark Andreessen on Rogan about how we need the good oligarchs to save us from the bad oligarchs. We have the conversation of the deep state and the rebels and fight. It is an organized presentation to, in my opinion, to convince us that we are fighting something bad while they guide us into what the entirety of the government structure seems to be hell-bent on driving into reality because it allows them complete control over our lives. So we're going to go through this more so. Hopefully you've seen the previous shows, but that part is just standing out like crazy. We have discussions around Venezuela we'll talk about today, a tanker that was just seized and how that seems to connect with the larger conversation. But you have to understand, at least again, from my perspective, and I hope that you will take the time to look through this, disagree with me, challenge me, but look at the source material, that this is a Zionist, globalist, technocrat agenda. Now, I was saying this because there's in a lot of ways overlap for pretty much this last administration, because it really did start to show its head in a very obvious way. Obviously, the major genocide brought a lot of these things out for most people around Zionism. But what's interesting is just to clearly see that they are connected. It is the same, whether it's because they're all working together, you could look at it that way, or that they are the same thing. And also note that the people I will always point this out, who have been making a career on using those buzzwords and pointing to things in some cases align with what they were pointing at, but at a time when there was barely any momentum about it, now finally we have actual awareness and people starting to talk about it in the partisanship even, and those people seem to be cheering it on, to be quite honest, including the war on Venezuela that seems to be, I guess, the Republican, we'll get to it. The point of, when I say that, remember, I mean the team sport players. You conservatives out there, I'm happy to see that people are starting to finally speak out about what's going on, just like we were pleading with Democrats to do the same during COVID-19. But we'll talk about a few other things today that are very important, as it all overlaps with this conversation today. Artificial intelligence, where it's going, the growing, control structure, the control grid. It's all building out around us, and how this not just dovetails. It is the same conversation. Prospera and the network state and the CEO-run country, freedom cities. I'm going to read an article from Roger Stone that just lays it all out. The support for Prospera, it is a freedom city. I was making that point because I thought it was contentious in the beginning. Nobody was connecting those two things. And I'm like, this is the freedom city conversation. This crazy thing over here that they're trying to keep secret, that's what Trump is telling you is coming to America. And now you stand back and look, wait a minute, there's 120 of these things. It's happening in most countries. It's in the middle of the ocean. We're watching the world change in front of us. And at least in this country, they're trying to keep us nose down in the most benign, inconsequential, partisan, social, identity politics nonsense. And some of it does have relevance, but if our lives are being changed so radically to the point to where, we'll wake up and not even recognize the world around us, do those things even matter? It's up for you to decide, but I believe this is something that's very, very important today. Now I'm going to start with a point around Robert Inlakesh that I wanted you to see. Great to see The Intercept focused on this. It looks like they were doing sort of a long-term investigation on this. This is from The Intercept about Robert Inlakesh. A journalist reported from Palestine. YouTube deleted his account, claiming he's an Iranian agent. Now, you guys know the story. We've interviewed him. He's been censored on YouTube like most of us have. Now take note of the ones that are largely allowed back on there. But YouTube offered conflicting explanations for deleting his account of Robert Inlakesh, who covered Israel's occupation of the West Bank. It's worth your reading. It's incredible to see how duplicitous and how completely dishonest this is. They're just what this shows me, like we see in most of the cases that are not even debatable at this point. I believe this is largely Israel because of the conversation he's having, but somebody out there is going, that can't be allowed. Don't talk about that. Give him whatever, misinformation, medical, something, Iranian agent, shut it down. And so they called him Iranian agent. There's no evidence whatsoever. Now, there's an overlap. He's worked with groups like Press TV, RT, so to have a lot of people, because the American censorship network was so powerful, still is, they went to places that were allowing their conversation. And that doesn't mean that they're the bastions of free speech. As always, it's important to frame it at the point I make about Russia. When Russia counterbalances itself to the belligerence of the United States, it doesn't have to mean that that Putin and his administration are more balanced or more measured. It could just mean that they're hiding that because they know it presents well to the chaos that the U.S. is creating. Or maybe they are just being more balanced, or maybe they're doing it in a way and all the worst things are behind the scene. The point is that you can see a use of that. Like basically, people who want to present themselves to make it look like they're the good person in the conversation. I think our government's doing that everywhere right now. Doesn't mean that they are. I think that's an important point to think about. But he was working with Press TV because they were allowing that. They were RT because they were allowing him, unfettered, complete conversation about what he was discussing. And you can see why that would be in their benefit because they're largely on the other side of the conversation. Now, I also do think, just to be objective and clear, that those platforms are far more open about a lot of things, more so than most American media. It's important to think about and look at it for yourself. It doesn't mean good versus bad. It's just being objective about it. But this kind of thing has been happening for so long. And right now, think about the kind of conversation that's allowed. Thank you to The Intercept for making that investigation. Now, on Epstein, to start a few points I want to get into, just a quick segment before we start with Venezuela, and then the entire conversation today is about AI and the network state overlap and how that connects to Zionism and globalism, the whole thing, and how pretty much all of this does, to be honest. But in case you didn't see it, Thomas Massie on the 9th says second federal judge has just approved release of the Epstein-Maxwell grand jury material based on the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Ro Khanna and he ushered through Congress and Trump signed. It's happening, he says. Well, I'm not going to hold my breath. We're going to wait and see what happens because clearly the law doesn't seem to stop the people that are involved with. I mean, look, they know if this truly comes out the way we know it is, people will go to jail. I doubt that's ever going to happen. So probably something is going to happen. Historically, that's the way it tends to go. But fingers crossed, I hope. Secondarily, on the 10th, this is today, he says new development. 3 federal judges who previously could not release grand jury material have now ruled that their Epstein Files Transparency Act has changed the legal landscape, and they will be releasing all material with redactions to protect victims. So again, good to hear. I'm glad more is going to come out. But if we comparatively, it doesn't really change anything, then that's worth discussion when it happens. But I'm glad to see that more is coming out. And what's worth note in all of this is how much resistance the people telling you they're the most transparent administration in history have been giving around this topic. And then Trump acting like, whatever, release it. I don't care. Yeah, except for you dragging your feet and saying, no, it's fake, it's hoax, the Republicans, the Democrat, and, Johnson doing everything he can to stop this. It's just obvious. Only a willfully ignorant person can't see what's going on. And again, to understand the reality, if you haven't heard the conversation, this applies to all sides of the paradigm. It's not a left and right situation. That's why I think both sides are doing their best to keep this from coming out. But right now, the Republicans are in power, so Democrats are able to throw those shots and make it look like they're fighting it. But we'll see what happens when it comes out. But it's important to note how much resistance there's been. Now, on a few other important points, Massie came out and introduced legislation to end America's membership in NATO. Fantastic. I liked it when Trump said it. I just didn't actually think it was going to come to pass because he says a lot of things that don't actually come to pass. So too do a lot of politicians, almost all. Chris Razzani says NATO should have disbanded when the Warsaw Pact disbanded in 1991. I'll finish. 34 years later, we're still waiting to get rid of it, he says. Massie is right as usual. Now, in regard to NATO, let's remember, NATO is de facto like the world military. Post 9/11, I think it was Article 5, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong about that, but attack one, attack all, and they used it to essentially, continue to this day, war on terror. I mean, it's not used as visibly as that, but it's essentially what we're talking about. And so he is saying we should stop it. Trump floated the idea because he knew it resonated with people that actually want liberty and freedom, people who are actually libertarian, anarchist, because that's what he needed to tap into. And then he went the other way. He did a lot of things and moved things around, and now they're paying more. Okay, good. So we wanted to be out of it, but Trump made money from it. So yay, freedom, or yay, money, or pretend money for you, even though you get none of it. It's like, we need to stop. I always want to make that point. At the time when that stuff happens, it's worthy of calling it out, right? The person who's been saying we shouldn't be in it, who then switches to look at how good he's running it, or whatever the narrative switches to, those, like the cat turds of the conversation, will shout one thing as absolute and the next day do the opposite because Trump said it. And not even delete the old tweet. It's just brainless. But I think that's just because it's a mindless moving forward. I support the thing of today, just like they made fun of the team sport Democrats for doing. Okay, Nate, here's another example about January 6th. But this is something that seems to be brushed over by a lot. It was a smaller part of this current conversation, but this is and was a huge thing predominantly for the Republicans. And Trump's administration seems to be just, I'm going to wait to really hold judgment until this concludes, if it ever does. But the shift from what appeared to be a gate match for somebody who worked for Capitol Police that Massey was convinced of into an anarchist that we are hunting down or whatever it is, just, I doubt it goes anywhere. Liz Harrington reports the same people who tried to frame President Trump for January 6th are right now running the pipe bomber case. That seems like a problem. Yes, certainly does. Unless the game is to make it look like you're investigating and then go, Democrat, oh, they were holdover. They did it. They stopped it. And we were trying, and the Democrats, the same game that's played every single thing. No arrests yet. Not one, not Epstein, not January 6th, not stolen election, Social Security. You can go on down the list. Not a single one. But let's keep pretending like it's all coming down, right? I hope so. I think they all deserve to go to jail. The point, though, is that these people are there. You either are going to say, well, then that's a setup, or he's not actually going after them, or both. And Thomas says, why does this Jocelyn Ballantine still have a job and tags Donald Trump and Bondi in the DOJ? And why is she working on the pipe bomb case after what she did in the past? Yeah, very valid question. I doubt we get an answer because the people who need to see this don't want to see it, and Trump's never going to acknowledge it because it's obviously not. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's hypocritical. Now, as Jason writes, let me get this straight. 1 month after investigation found a 94% gate match between the January 6th pipe bomber and a former U.S. Capitol Police officer, which happened. We talked about it. It's very clear. Massey reported it. The FBI suddenly, after 5 years, rolls out a suspect conveniently self-branded as an anarchist. Anyone buying this? I mean, it is pretty ridiculous. But that's what's been going on. Now, on that very note, very quickly, and I'm going to keep following up on this, guys. And this is just really interesting to where this is going. Now, it hasn't really resolved, but the whole pumpkin terror case of Halloween, well, interestingly, it's FBI still analyzing seized devices for overseas ISIS links, which is interesting, seeing as how just very quickly, the beginning here, it seems as if, as we thought, this was the cash FBI lobbing out what they think it looks like over the top of this without having the evidence in hand, like they seem to keep doing. Comey, for example, and that's just the DOJ really, but my point is, in this case, the FBI clearly was saying ISIS linked and connection, and now they're combing through everything to try to find that. Now, this is, again, I'm going to get into and make a point about this in a second about Grok. This is not because just Grok said. This is the point of the Republican Elon Musk cultivated Grok stating what they're doing and not doing. I find that relevant. But all of this has been just vetted and discussed elsewhere, as always. And I'll make that point again in a second, but I just want to state that out because this is something we should always, it's wrong 50% of the time. Like, think about that. I'm just a number I'm throwing out there, but it's constantly giving me information when you're engaging with it that I'm like, that's just not correct. This is information they're saying is the current state, and it says the case is tied to a prior 2024 ISIS probe. Okay, great. So they continued Biden's work because that makes sense, doesn't it? Defense claims of entrapment persist, which is important because, you'd argue the defense at some point, like if the evidence was pretty damn clear, they're not going to keep, a defense lawyer is going to stand up for their client. But in most cases, if they're out there, it seems to me that they're continuing to really push like that this is an entrapment. And they're right to the point where they're about to go to court. So it could be them just blustering before they go to court, or it seems to me like there's more about this being a setup. It says, with McCled arguing the FBI exaggerated online chatter into a coordinated terror plot without concrete targets or means. Now, that's what I think they did, whether this says that or not, on top of the fact that that's what they've been caught doing many times. And it says critics, including former CIA analyst Sarah Adams, allege heavy informant involvement, which we already knew, but at least 3 agents. And they write borders on a psyop to hype FBI successes, which sounds like what they're desperate for. Now, it says this is the first major terrorism case under the Trump administration FBI leadership. So where this goes will be very relevant. But as it stands right now, it appears to me that this is based on nothing other, as it says, where was it? Right here. Now, think about this for a second. They're trying to make this sound like terrorism because of they claim, well, they're Muslim, of course, and they're connected to Michigan and Dearborn, and that which Doesn't prove anything. And the point is that here we have an example of guns and stuff and shooting at a range. And so this is what they're saying with these things connected with the idea of what they claim are digital ISIS propaganda, which they've never shown anybody, and attack planning notes, which nothing's been proven. They would be shoving that in your face if they had this, like Cash has done before, but maybe it'll come out in court. But the reality is right now, that doesn't appear to be the reality. They're saying the videos that I'm discussing the word pumpkin are the ISIS videos or the narrative talking about it. But this is all based on what they've claimed because we haven't got access to this yet. So bear that in mind. But the weapons. So 3 rifles, 2 shotguns, and 4 handguns. Guys, I know more people that have that in their living room. Now, that doesn't mean that that's everybody in the country. I do live in Tennessee. But the point is that this is not indicative of anything other than Second Amendment. I mean, there's a lot of people, Republicans more than anybody, that have an entire room full of this stuff. Ask Thomas Massey. He showed it online. But then it says over 1,600 rounds. That's not that much when you understand how much people stocked up, especially during COVID-19 when there was basically a blackout and you couldn't even find ammunition. That's very common. Trust me. And it says tactical vests, GoPro cameras, things to increase firing rate. Again, these are like benign, average, most American kind of stuff. Well, maybe not most, but very prominent in this country. So, but yes, if somebody is out to do a terrible thing, then those could be, but it's just all of this other than what they're putting on top of it seems to be based on narrative. But again, we'll leave it there. This is as it currently stands. You'd think there'd be more motion by now if they acted like it was so airtight that they went right to it. But we'll wait and see. Now, the reason this is also relevant is because of this conversation. Remember the FBI shooting in Dallas? Guess how this ended up? The whole point we were making on this, and correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't there a report of an FBI agent being shot or like nicked in the neck? I swear that is what Cash or somebody said. I can't find that. At least, let me know in the chat because I was anyway. Because I'm pretty sure they said that in a couple of different press conferences, but that wouldn't surprise me, seeing as how they've lied about those kind of things in almost every circumstance. But in regard to this shooting, it turns out that right now, like I thought, the one person that actually shot, who ultimately seemed to have killed himself afterward, is the person they're focused on. No other people have been arrested. The entire thing they made this about was about the 2 people. Remember that? Cash was all going after the 2 people that were there, the Antifa protests, and it turns out like I thought, they were just at the protest and somebody shot somebody and they went after people who were Antifa because this seems desperate for a win. At the moment, as of today, the FBI's investigation into the September 24th shooting at the ICE facility in Dallas remains active and ongoing. No major developments such as charges against accomplices, formal closure. Well, I guess we'll wait and see. I've like I said, the reality of this was pretty clear in the beginning. That they were reaching to try to make the lefty terrorist narrative stick. But as always, when the information comes further, we'll show you. But hey, let's talk about the other indictments. Guess you probably didn't know that Letitia James has already been dismissed. That went under the radar. James Comey. The indictment was dismissed without prejudice. The DOJ has not appealed the dismissal. But Jones told you they're all going down, right? But it's actively considering new indictments, however, citing a possible 6-month grace period, triggered by flaw indictments. We'll figure it out down the line. But they're the deep state killing us all and going to we'll give them 6 months. We'll figure it out, right? Letitia James, alleging that she misrepresented property details because, big time deep state stuff for her favorable mortgage terms. What a joke. The original indictment was, now, by the way, crime is a crime and they should be charged. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that this is what they claim. You know what crimes they're actually guilty of, what people are discussing, and this is what you're doing? And you could argue it's because that's all they can put together, but that's BS. Anyway, the original indictment was dismissed without prejudice. That's Letitia James. This is DOJ fails to secure Letitia James indictment from grand jury. Why isn't that being discussed? I guess they're out there #winning all day long, right? Career prosecutors had initially deemed the evidence insufficient, leading to internal pushback and firings. Right. The point is, just like the other one, the people who were there appointed by Trump, who were Republicans, were like, there's nothing there. I'm not going to just throw well, then you're fired. Haba, come on in here because you're going to do it no matter what, right? Oops, now she's resigned because there's a whole problem there. Like this administration is completely melting down. Alina Haba resigns after court disqualified her from being New Jersey's top prosecutor. Now, I can't see who's to say what came first. I mean, it seemed she resigned when that was going to happen. And, at the end of the day, This is the person who stepped up because other prosecutors wouldn't do it because there was nothing to make the case. And like I said, people will jump up because they want the power. They want the influence. But then she gets pushed aside. So how many times can we see this before we start recognizing they are just playing everybody? John Bolton. Now, this one's interesting. Of all of them, I argue he is wildly, they're all criminals in my mind, but John Bolton deserves to be held accountable more than most. Bolton pleaded not guilty on October 17th before the U.S. Magistrate Judge Timothy Sullivan and was released on his own recognizance, retaining his passports. Because that's how they go after the deep state bad guys. And it says a status conference occurred on November 21st, where prosecutors indicated potential additional charges pending review of seized materials, expected to last until, May 2026. Argues the shared notes were unclassified family communications, John Bolton says. Now, I don't think John Bolton's an innocent person, but I'm willing to bet you anything that it turns out that they are just random communication between the family. When you know as well as I that this guy has probably got not a closet, a lion witch in the wardrobe full of anything you could possibly. This guy, we've just played the clips of him kind of joking about his coup d'etats in Venezuela. Those are crimes, guys. But see, they can't charge him for that. They're literally doing one right now in Honduras and Venezuela, sort of, or they have been, and Trump's bombing Somalia. These are criminals, guys. And he put Bolton in the position. And he says, waived a speedy trial rights. Proceedings could extend all the way until late 2026 or beyond. That's what it says. Now, that is what you'll find. You can read the articles for yourself. What's funny to me is that this seems to be like I thought. Nothing. Where it's a bunch of names thrown at the wall who deserve to go to jail, who will end up skirting by like every other one of them have. Every one of them. From Pelosi to Trump to Biden to Obama, none of them have been held accountable. Not Clinton's, not Klaus Schwab, not Bill Gates. But yeah, hashtag winning, guys. It's all coming down. Now, Thomas Massey also puts this in. This week, he writes, which came out today, by the way, we vote on the National Defense Authorization Act. They do it every year or ever. I believe it's every year. Yeah, every year. I offered these amendments he writes to restore freedom, promote peace, cut billions of dollars in foreign aid. You know what Trump said was the focus, save money, America first. And he goes, and put America first. Speaker Johnson, however, and the Rules Committee chose to prevent any amendments from coming to vote. Of course, Trump can act like he has no idea what's going on. Maybe he doesn't. But Johnson's put there because of him. And the point ends up being all the things that might actually be America first, that might actually cut costs, doesn't matter. Why? Because, well, they want to be able to query foreign intelligence information collected under Section 702 of the FISA Act, because he put an amendment to prohibit that, or an amendment to repeal the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act. But of course not. Trump and Johnson want that, so that doesn't count. Prohibits the transfer of MK-84 2,000-pound bombs to Israel. Voided. We want to allow that. Strikes extension of the Ukraine. You get where this goes, guys. All of the things that you would argue that you would expect America first or not more spending or peace president to do are the things where Massey was trying to make happen, and they did not want them. Because as of right now, it already passed. House passes $901 billion military defense bill, which, as I've said in many years past, that is way, when you count the black budget, when you count the things that they don't consider military, even though it is in regard to the defense budget, we are way over $1 trillion and have been for a while. 900 billion just on the surface that you can see. Is that saving money? The idea that he's using the same argument they've always used. America first, because we have to go out there and protect America. It is about America, right? When we seize the oil in Syria, it's about you, America. It's about making your prices go down and helping you be safe. Or not. But see, America first, what conservatives wanted was not that at all. Not the foreign policy adventure keeping you safe, but the actual America first, right? Not seeking adventure abroad, but focusing on a United States outward defense, not beyond our borders. It's not what's happening. On top of that, Rand Paul says that's not America first when the U.S. Congress approves a defense bill with $800 million in aid for Ukraine. Peace president. Wasn't going to end those wars on day one. How'd that work out? Putin's fault. Whatever. I didn't say why it wouldn't happen. I just said it was a stupid thing to believe because at first he didn't even want to do that, in my opinion. Secondly, there's a lot more moving parts than just Trump saying he's going to do something. But there are articles of impeachment announced. Hasn't happened yet. Al Green, Democrat. So regardless of the intention behind it, I do think he should be impeached. Like I think Biden should have been impeached. These people are criminals, guys. And if you're actually going to hold to the standard of the Constitution, every one of them at this point, as far at some level, pretty far back, you can argue should have been impeached. So if we got to start somewhere, don't we? It shouldn't be partisan to acknowledge the obvious problem, but it will get pushed back on as partisan, unfortunately. Now, with Venezuela, from the peace president, Donald Trump says they've seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. Now, it's interesting the way they first reported it. It doesn't seem to say it's Venezuelan, just off the coast of Venezuela, but it does very clearly it does seem as if it's directly connected to Venezuela, which would suggest that they stole oil from Venezuela under the guise of freedom, I guess. This is just blatant piracy. December 10th. U.S. forces on Wednesday seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. Quote, this is just classic Trump. He says, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela. A large tanker, very large. The largest one ever seized, actually. I mean, it might be, but it's just so funny how often he does the bombastic, hyperbolic thing. And then you look it up, it's like, oh, it was middle, like not the biggest. Okay. Like, why do you feel the need to bluster like that in moments that you don't even need to? We'll show you examples of that in a minute. I didn't even care to look it up. It's a benign point. But, this is just the funny thing about the crowd size, whatever, because it becomes this thing. But it's just the largest ever. What does that matter? What does that even have to do with whether you did this? It's just because he's like, I'm the greatest all the time. And whatever I do, it's better than everybody else. But he said this during a meeting recently. I'll play a clip. He provided no detail on who owned the tanker or its destination. Trump has escalated pressure on Venezuela, on Maduro in Venezuela, the president. And he said, quote, days are numbered in an interview with Politico for the president. Right. I mean, there's just no hiding. What do you mean the days are numbered? So you are planning to remove him from power. Like, the fact that he's not even tactful about this. These are criminal activities, guys. There's no reality in which you can but it's not new. Every president in my lifetime has done exactly this. Trump's just really clumsy about it. But maybe that's by design. Maybe he's being told to do that. It says he would not rule out a ground invasion of South American nation. Now, I hate that kind of a question. When, would you rule? I won't rule it out. I mean, it's just, that means, is it possible? Of course it's possible, but it's insinuating it'll happen. So I tend to ignore those kind of points, like Russia saying that, we have the right to respond in with a nuclear weapon. Should you do X, Y, and Z does not mean I'm threatening you with a nuclear weapon, right? But you get the Jones, they go, World War III, because he said the thing. But Venezuela is a founding member of OPEC and has been has the largest proven oil reserves in the world. It is exporting about 749,000 barrels per day this year, with at least half of the oil going to China, according to data from energy consulting from Kepler. Quote, shippers will likely be much more cautious and hesitant about loading Venezuela crude going forward. These guys are pirates, man. So your illegal seizing of the ship is going to warn people away from legal business with a foreign country? Yes. So it's exactly what they tried to accomplish. These are pirates. These are mafioso types. Nothing new, though. This is not unique to Trump's administration. Max Blumenthal says Trump proudly announces an act of piracy with the U.S. theft of an oil tanker from Venezuela bound for Cuba. The act of financial terrorism was aimed at starving Cuba of energy, which, how long the Cuba discussion has been going on. It just shows you this is just pride, or really when it comes down to it, it is that, but it's about the necessity of the agenda, not about freeing the Cuban people. As from the government's perspective, like whatever resource they're after, whatever geostrategic control they're trying to seize. And it says worsening its blackout crisis and tormenting its population, which is actually happening. It just doesn't get as much as a conversation today because it's been going on for so long, and there's, so many things going on in the world today. But here's what he said.
Very much. It's been an interesting day from the standpoint of news. As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, a large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually.
Somebody looked that up.
And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later, and you'll be talking about that later with some other people.
Just the way he talks, it just kills me. Are you just rambling? It's just funny. I don't even know how to frame it half the time. Just what he does, it's so I don't know, contrived, I guess. Like, it's just like, he's just blustering all the time. And I don't even know how to frame it exactly all the time, but it's just what he's doing. It gives me the very real sense that he's not saying anything of substance. He's just trying to talk for talk's sake. Now, here is what David DeCamp had to say about it. And he says, certainly would be treated as an act of war if anyone did that to a tanker carrying U.S. oil near our coast. Of course it would. Why is that different? I mean, in any real sense, not the, rah-rah, Venezuela socialist, not those kind of morons in the world who just argue because your ideas, then therefore you're the bad guy, and otherwise arguing that the freedom of ideology and free speech, in every other picture, just hypocrites. This Venezuela's a country. Maduro's been elected, despite the screaming ridiculousness of the Zionist, globalist U.S., axis. It's obvious based on hundreds of international observers, including American, including U.S. allies. So, I mean, you can always argue that's not true, but there's no counterbalance other than narratives coming from the United States. They've never proven that because guess what? It's not actually what happened. Okay, so he was elected. So you can argue socialist, okay, but that's what people are voting for. Likely because of how crazy we're seeing the Western powers act today. And I don't want any government. I think all of them end up in the same place, but you can see it's sort of like the two-party paradigm of the centuries of our political situation in the world. Right? Where people go, man, the capitalists are crazy. We're going to go socialist. Look at the West. And he goes, same kind of thing. Not as exact, but the bottom line is that to argue that just because you disagree with them, that you're just going to steal from them, obviously that's a crime. So why would it be any different? Why would it be different from, let's just even say somebody other than Venezuela? What if the UK? What if the UK decided a U.S. tanker was part and just seized it? The UK, they're not calling the UK a terrorist organization, right? So how would you frame that? Is it suddenly okay because it's a Western, predominantly white country? It's still a crime, isn't it? Attorney General Pam Bondi says, today, the Bureau, the FBI, Homeland Security, and the United States Coast Guard, with support from Department of War. Isn't this weird how they're always like tagging and high-fiving each other? Why in the world would the FBI, Homeland Security, the Coast Guard, and the Department of War be involved in seizing this boat all together at the same time? I highly doubt they were. They're all just trying to go like, oh, Cash was involved too. He's so good at his job. Go tell him he's good at his job. He's very insecure right now. But that's what they're doing. And it says, of course, sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran. Okay. What do you mean? So you're illegally seizing this because you wrote it down on a piece of paper that they're bad guys. Got it. For multiple years, the oil tanker has been sanctioned by the United States due to its involvement in illicit oil shipping. Oh, it's illicit because they claim it's not supposed to happen. That's it. So it's not illicit. It's illicit because you claim they're not allowed to do it. Then they do what everybody else does, and you go, that's illegal. No, it's not. You guys are breaking the law. Of course, it's because they're supporting foreign terrorist organizations. You mean like all the groups you guys support? Like supporting a genocide? No, not like that. Anyway, how embarrassing. Dave DeCamp also said, here's what the U.S. military had to say less than a month ago when Iran seized an oil tanker off its coast in the Strait of Hormuz in their international, territorial waters. It says Iran's use of military forces to conduct an armed boarding and seizure of a commercial vessel in international waters constitutes a blatant violation of international law. It does. Undermining freedom of navigation and the free flow of commerce. See, they know all the right words when it happens to them. We call on Iran, or rather, it's done by somebody they want to use it against. We call on Iran to articulate to the international community the legal basis for its actions. So they sure as hell laid out why they argue that was happening. Doesn't mean it's legal or they have any real basis there, what Pam Bondi said. It's pretty sad. And I still argue, whether conservative, liberal, or aware of the ridiculousness of the two-party paradigm, people are very aware of this. I think people even that cheer for it are aware of it. They just want to support their team. And of course, here's Alex Jones. Locked and loaded. Pentagon launches airborne command centers over Venezuela. Insiders say it's the final step before strikes. My God, what happened to this person? Well, the truth is he's always been this person, as we just showed you from Bill Cooper forward. But the reality is it's all about getting you on board and then turning to the direction that supports the team. And now, apparently, it's war with Venezuela. The guy who doesn't support war, right? Warmongering. And here's Donald Trump showing you how dishonest he is, or maybe how senile. You can decide. I have no problem releasing the video of that second strike. We literally played that on this show. Remember that? 5 days later? What do you mean? I didn't say that. ABC, you're fake news. And all the people who are blind supporters go, yeah, fake news. Democrats suck. And don't care that he's lying or don't care to look and pretend that he's telling the truth.
You released video of that first boat strike on September 2nd, but not the second video. Will you release video of that strike so that the American people can see for themselves what happened?
I don't know what they have, but whatever they have, we'd certainly release, no problem.
You said you would have no problem with releasing the full video of that strike on September 2nd off the coast of Venezuela. Secretary Hegseth now says...
You said that. I didn't say that. This is ABC fake news.
How embarrassing, right? I mean, just, it says MS-13. I mean, how many times can we be embarrassed? This is just the cartoonish nature of it. This is why my point is that most people are like, God, it's a small point. But I argue that it's probably because he thinks that, it's like when cops first got their body cameras and they knew they were there, but they still just kind of did what they did anyway. And they kept getting caught in the cameras. It's like, it's like we can see on the internet what you said. I don't think it's that he just doesn't remember. I think that he can just go, you're fake news. And everyone's like, yeah. I think right now in particular, he over imagines what his support base is and what they'll do. At one point, yes, I think they would have done anything. Now, not so much. Very interesting. Now on another, this one, here we go. On another point on that, last one on this, and this kind of overlaps with the interview we're going to get into about what he says with Hernandez or Orlando Hernandez. I'll wait on making a point there. This is about Crimea. Same interview, but it relates to larger kind of in between, just war, state, peace, president conversation. It appears as if Crimea might be on his mind. And it is worth pointing this out because he did the same kind of thing about Gaza. It's a beautiful area, lots of real estate, value. It's just a gross way to talk about people's lives and society in regard to like political maneuvering to gain it for your real estate buddies. At the end of the day, Crimea, let's not forget. And what he says about Obama doing this, this is the kind of lazy rhetoric that people just go with without checking. It's undeniable. The evidence, let's be objective as possible. The evidence, the mountain of evidence, aside from the narrative coming from the U.S., shows very clearly that this was what was it, 98%, the referendum to join Russia, a predominantly Russian-speaking location, who was being ethnically cleansed by the Azov movement. So was Donbass. And this was being reported by the corporate media at the time, well before they needed to pretend they weren't Nazis anymore. And they were telling you that. So why would this group that's being murdered and ethnically cleansed by these Nazis that the U.S. and Israel and everyone else were growing there for a long time? That's the CIA Operation Aerodynamic. They didn't want to be doing that anymore, quite obviously. And so they joined with Russia. That was not, Obama did not force them to do that. And they were same conversation. There were international observers that clearly document, but it doesn't matter because the narrative becomes they seized it, they stole it. Same with Donbass, same with the lie about how the war started. And that's not to say Putin good guy. It's just to simply acknowledge the reality. So that he's saying this seems like maybe we're going to get a resurgence of Trump never stopped supporting the ongoing joint war to, I guess, either just mire Russia on Ukraine, keep it distracted, or to possibly do something larger and allow Israel to sweep in and steal all of Syria. And that is interconnected, by the way. But I'll play the clip and you'll see what I mean.
Hard time.
Should NATO stop accepting new members? Should NATO end where it is now?
Well,
this was the conversation of NATO and Ukraine, which he acknowledges, which I'll credit to him for saying it, that it was clearly that was something that wasn't supposed to happen. And then it became a conversation point, which was, but he does say that before this.
There aren't that many left when you get right down to it, right? There aren't that many left. It was always... long before Putin, it was an understanding that Ukraine would not be going into NATO. This was long before Putin, in all
I think I cut it in.
And now they pushed, when Zelensky first went in and first met Putin, he said, I want two things. I want Crimea back, and we're going to be a member of NATO. He didn't say it in a very nice way either. He's a great salesman. I call him P.T. Barnum.
So funny.
You know who P.T. Barnum was, right?
I do.
One of the greatest on earth. He could sell any product at any time. That was his expression. I can sell any product at any time. It was true. He said, doesn't matter whether it works or not.
Yeah, great. He's calling you a huckster. He's calling you a manipulator. I'll sell you no matter what. It's funny how much he thinks that's high praise.
But he's P.T. Barnum. He got Crooked Joe Biden, you give him $350 billion. And look what it got. It got him about 25% of his country is missing.
Yeah, that's what happened, right? Because he got money. It's just, what a ridiculous way to frame that. By the way, you have continued giving him money too. The idea is clearly that this is a U.S. government, Israel, a lot of other, UK, there's plenty of countries involved, but I think it's predominantly U.S., Israel. You can see the CIA Operation Aerodynamic that's been cultivating this fascist entity since, 1948? I'll bring it up and look at it when we're done with the clip. And clearly have been growing this. And so the idea that you're telling me you gave him money to support the ongoing issue that you've been growing, and that's why, he lost that territory because you guys have driven this into reality because you do not care about Ukraine. It's about something else entirely, which there's many things to get into about the possibilities, not the focus for today. But it's just a frustrating way that he just casually lies to you about very large conversation points.
And in all fairness to Biden, Obama gave away Crimea.
That all happened in 2014.
Obama, because Crimea was the heart. I'm a real estate person at heart, right? I'm very good at real estate. And every time I look at that map, I said, oh, this Crimea is so beautiful. Wow. It's surrounded on 4 sides by ocean. It's only got a little piece of land to get to, to the main, Crimea is massive. But it connects the part of Ukraine that we talk about now,
right,
through a small little jetty. It's 4 sides of ocean in the warmest part. It's got the best weather, best everything. And I know you are Ukrainian, and you know Ukraine very well. And Obama forced them to give up Crimea. That was I remember when it happened, but I wasn't involved like I am now. To the knowledge that I have now, I have great knowledge of Ukraine. I have great
I just love this. I'm great at real estate, and I have great knowledge of the world now. I mean, who talks like that? That's a insecure person. I'm just always pointing that out. The person pounding his chest going, I'm the strongest one in the room, is usually the weakest one in the room. And I'm not even just talking about physical strength. It's just a weakness to do this, guys. I can't stop pointing that out.
knowledge of
really,
many
this
countries.
conflict began back in 2014. People forget, long before the invasion of a few years ago.
Well, you know when this conflict really began, though? It was simmering for years, but when Obama gave up Crimea, that was a big thing.
Right. So you just interrupt and revert it right back to what you want to say. It's not true, by the way. I mean, it's just lazy, but it's, the Democrats, I'm fixing it, and people buy it. But to make sure you understand how much more there, this all interconnects with a much larger conversation. And so I posted this today. I want to reiterate that you can check out Jason's clip he made of the overview I did of this connection. He wrote, he said, Prospera is a test run, backed by the same billionaire investors pushing freedom cities in the United States, propped up by Trump's pardoned allies, and designed as a model for future land-grabbing mini states run by tech elites. Important clip. So we're going to get into this right now. The overlap. An important point of the pardon of Orlando Hernandez, and how it shows you, one, that Trump is willing to do this because of, I guess, people who might be pulling his strings, which is the way you should be considering this, but also just that it's the larger agenda around this network cult that I see. Now, Honduras seeks arrest of ex-President Hernandez after Trump's pardon. So right after Trump pardoned him, Honduras issued an international arrest warrant for him, which I think is a very clear statement, and it's going to frustrate Trump. And ultimately, this is them kind of going toe-to-toe with him on this conversation. It says Honduras Attorney General Joel Zelaya said Monday that he had ordered Honduran authorities and asked Interpol to execute a 2023 arrest order. So it's a pre-existing for ex-President Juan Orlando Hernandez, pardoned by President Trump. I just want to point the obvious out there. I think that's an important thing to think about. Now, here's where it gets more interesting. Trump says, I don't know him. Now, you got to stop and think, why would he say that? Sometimes I think like he is trying to make, like I've often pointed out, acting like he's some kind of an independent observer, that I'm not involved. I'm just giving my thoughts on it, even though he's the central figure in most of these things. So maybe he thought that's what make that look, but this is really crazy thing to say. You just pardoned a person arrested for 500 tons of cocaine, and especially in the United States, as he's claiming to stop drug trafficking in the United States. It's embarrassing. So, it's who knows whether that was made to make him look stupid. I don't know. But to say you don't know him, even if you did and you're just trying to hide that fact, which is one of the possibilities, it's projecting the fact that you're willing to pardon people because your billionaire supporters told you to or asked you to without even caring what he's responsible for, or the fact that why do they want that? And we're going to get into that right now. Clearly, Roger Stone, Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, these people have a very clear interest in this overlapping conversation. So let's take this out. This, I think this was just a short one, was it's on the Newsbreak app, but I forget what. Mediaite. It says President Trump sat down at the White House for a lengthy interview with Politico's Dasha Burns, who you just saw in that Crimea clip. That was the same interview. Burns pressed Trump on the apparent hypocrisy of his pardoning of a violent drug trafficker, former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez, while promising to crack down on drugs coming to the United States. We'll go through the questions. It says, notably, one of the lead investigators on the Hernandez case was a close Trump ally, former personal lawyer Emil Bove. Trump later appointed Bove to be Deputy Attorney General before making him a federal judge. U.S. attorneys who prosecuted Hernandez had said he was at the center of one of the largest and most violent drug trafficking conspiracies in the world. But apparently they told me it was an Obama thing. So pardon. So this either shows one of the most cartoonishly childly, like somebody who can be manipulated like a child wandering through a candy store, like that kind of absurdity, or he is not who you think he is. And he's willing to lie about these things and even make himself look that stupid in order to hide whatever's really going on. So let's watch the actual video.
And we're going to hit them on land very soon, too.
Almost all the illicit
Venezuela, as we're talking about, by the way. Very clearly, they're projecting that they're going to be war on land. Not just, by the way, bombing from the air. They've now made it much more clear that they're talking about invading Venezuela. Just beyond the pale.
Fentanyl in the United States is actually produced in Mexico using precursor chemicals from China, according to the DEA. And Venezuela isn't a significant source or transit country for fentanyl. It barely appears on the DEA's trafficking assessments.
Yeah. Well, they do send lots of drugs.
Okay. That is that's exactly the point. And the way he responds to this, it should make you laugh at him. So listen to it again. And I really want this to be important. I'm going to play a clip from Max Blumenthal. A couple things I'll play as we go through this. The idea that that's the lie. Fentanyl from Venezuela. They're not, cocaine is what they're pointing to in other contexts, but they're making it about fentanyl. There's still major Republican and even Democrat people who are saying that Venezuela fentanyl is killing Americans. They're just making it up. It's not true. And she asked that very clear question and points out that what you're trying to claim is not even the reality.
Well, I do want to ask,
and we're going to hit them on land very soon, too.
Almost all the illicit fentanyl in the United States is actually produced in Mexico using precursor chemicals from China, according to the DEA. And Venezuela isn't a significant source or transit country for fentanyl. It barely appears on the DEA's trafficking assessments.
Trump DEA.
Well, they do send lots of drugs. Those boats come in largely from Venezuela, so I would say that's a significant. And you.
Oh, that's it. That's it, guys. And he moves on. It is though. And there's lots of boats and stuff and there's bags. So it's real. Shut up. It says MS-13. It's like that moment right there. How ridiculous. Now it's either that he's just that ridiculous and doesn't know what he's talking about, or he's just trying to deflect because there's something much larger going on. I get the sense that it's both a lot of times. Here, and I'm going to just go back as touch so you can see the transition and we'll go to the next part.
Those boats come in largely from Venezuela, so I would say that's a significant. And you can see the drugs. You can see these bags all over the boat. Just bags
so
and
if it's
bags.
About drugs.
Sorry, I guess that was one more part to it. I thought that he jumped right there, but now she moves on. That was the extension of it, though. Bags and stuff, which is what I was saying. That's it. The data, the facts, that doesn't matter, but what I'm going to say is the case. It's not, though.
Would you consider...
But let me tell you what they do. They send really, really bad people into our country.
Right. Okay. So, right in his mind is thinking, okay. I'm guessing anyway, right there, the obvious point. Okay. Fentanyl's not the real point and she's calling it out, but they do bags and boats and stuff. But let me tell you what's really going on. Immigration. Yeah. Now, why do you think he did that? Because that's what gets people's attention who are blindly supporting him. And it's not an invalid point, right? There's very good points to be made there. But then if you understand the full picture, it's not Democrats bringing in voters. The lies they spin is insane to me. Now, there's some overlap to every one of these things, but the reality of all of your government using this, or Trump and Rubio allowing Venezuelan immigrants because of the last manipulation, or everything else they've continued to do, it's just so obvious that they're playing everybody.
They send really, really bad people into our country, and they've done it better than anybody else. They emptied their prisons into our country, and these prisoners are seriously tough. They entered, all of their prisons have been emptied into the United States of America. Murderers, 11,800.
Okay. Do you think that's true? They've emptied all of their prisons. They say it constantly. Well, let's take a look. Let's see what Grok has to say about that. Oh, I forgot I was going to play that clip. Well, I'll show this first since we're on this point. So again, Elon Musk, Republican Grok, the one who's very much on the side of the conversation, right, has said that himself, by the way. Is it true that Venezuela has emptied all of its prisons into the United States? Grok says no, it's not true that Venezuela has emptied all of its prisons in the United States. This is a persistent but unsubstantiated claim, often amplified in political rhetoric. But multiple independent fact checkers, expert analyses, and official reports find no evidence of a systematic Venezuelan government policy to release and transport large-scale prisoner populations, specifically the U.S. border. Now, I'm not blindly trusting fact checkers, Grok, or analyses. The point is there's no evidence. I've looked. You can look for yourself. Like there's no evidence for a 1,000% increase in attacks on ICE. These people are inveterate liars, and they continue to be, but so too of every other administration. They've just taken it to an obscenely ridiculous degree. But he keeps saying it, doesn't he? Doesn't matter. It's not true. Now, let me keep going. I'll play that clip in a second. I want to go back to the Mexico part of fentanyl.
88
So is
murders.
this about making sure Maduro sees justice?
So I'm going to go back a second so you can hear him. He wants to reiterate the number. It's so funny how he really wants people to always focus on what he thinks is the emphasis, right? Which, I mean, the person interviewing needs to somewhat, have a conversation, I argue, but it's funny how he does this where it's almost in many cases the part that nobody really wants to get into. And it's like the part he wants you to constantly think about. It's deflection in my mind.
Into the United States of America. Murderers, 11,888
So is
murderers.
this about making sure Maduro sees justice then?
11,888 murderers were.
Oh, you mean the murderers that didn't actually end? He's talking about the prison. Now, there are people that you can discuss in regard to immigration, but the claim he's making about releasing them all, he's referencing numbers that have been reported about some prison over. It's not the facts. But he's got a specific number, though, so it sure sounds real.
Were entered into our country, and Stupid Joe took all those people, and now we're getting them out. We're finding them. We found a lot of them, and we're getting them out.
It's just funny, isn't it? Joe Biden's a criminal, like all of them. He deserves to go to prison. But is it just like this, the lack of decorum, stupid Biden? It's just it's just a childish thing to do. It's because he is dumbing down the conversation because he thinks you're that stupid. I know he's wrong, but he's not wrong about all of them.
We're putting them in jail. Some are so dangerous and so bad that we don't want to put them back to their country because they'll find a way to get back in. But these are stone cold murderers.
And that's why he uses that conversation to cover the fact that they're deporting mostly benignly innocent people who've got a traffic ticket that have or a lapsed green card or all kind, or people who are here legally with no problem, or because they had said the wrong thing about the U.S. government or called out Israel. If you still don't know that's the reality to this very day, I don't know what you're looking at. The numbers are obscene. It's obvious. Even going back to the original flight to El Salvador, guys, what was it, 75% of them? No criminal record, not in the country illegal. They were in the process of some kind of seeking amnesty or trying to get citizenship. The idea that you would ever send somebody away under the guise of illegal immigration who was seeking citizenship is such a bastardization of what's going on. I mean, how else do you expect them to do that? Are they going to phone? Like, you're talking about people who are in many cases fleeing, foreign U.S. foreign policy or whatever else. They say, fleeing terrible things to come to. Okay. So they flee to the gate to the front and they go, I want to be a citizen. You're a criminal. Go to jail. What are they going to set up an appointment on their cell phone? Are they going to call ahead? I mean, this is how it's supposed to go. Now, you can turn them away. That's your prerogative. But the idea that you have people who are literally coming in going, I want to be a citizen. They let them in. They're going through that process. And then you deport them under the guise of being a terrorist for MS-13. It's ridiculous, guys.
Time we knock out a boat, we save 25,000 American lives. So
Oh, that
So
old
would you
gem,
consider-
these
right?
are stone cold.
Aside from the fact that, as Glenn Greenwald pointed out, what was it last year? 70,000 overdose. But every boat, mind you, 25,000 lives. They're just making things up.
Murderers. But every time we knock out a boat, we save 25,000 American lives.
So would you consider doing something similar with Mexico and Colombia that are even more responsible for fentanyl trafficking
Yeah, I
into
would.
the U.S.?
Sure, I would.
You pardoned
Probably
former
won't, though.
Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez and let him out of prison, even though he was convicted in a massive international drug trafficking scheme. How is that zero tolerance on drug trafficking?
Well, I don't know him, and I know very little about him, other than people said it was like a Obama-Biden type setup where he was set up.
Is that as easy as it is, Trump? Oh, that was Democrats did weird stuff. You know, do this for me. Thank you. Thank you. Here. Oh, here. You're welcome, billionaire friend who funded my campaign. You know, how in the world? I mean, it's just, I wish that one point needs the idea that you would pardon somebody you don't know, or you're claiming that anyway, because they said it was a manipulation. You don't care to vet that. What if the idea, first of all, the trafficking drug discussion, that's just ridiculous. What if he's a rapist? What if he's a murderer? All the things you keep saying about everybody else. He was in government. It's probably the case. And here you go. Well, I don't know. They told me he was bad. Obama did something. So get him out of there. Insane.
A Obama-Biden type setup where he was set up. He was the president of the country. The country
With no evidence, by the
deals
way.
in drugs like probably you could say that about every country. And because he was the president, they gave him like 45 years in prison.
Right. See, sort of the Israel argument. Well, then we all deal drugs. So why would you go after him for it? Funny art thing to say, isn't it? Or the idea that they gave him 45 years because he's the president. Well, you're damn right. It's like a police officer breaking the law. You should be charged harder. You guys are literally in a position of power. You should be held to a higher standard. The opposite is the case today. That's what they're trying to create. Trump trying to say, release, don't put Netanyahu in jail. He's the president. Like Nixon said, if the president does it, it's not illegal. They're all the same thing, guys.
And there are many people fighting for Honduras, very good people that I know. And
Yeah.
they think he was
Peter Thiel, Andreessen, Roger Stone. That's what we're talking about.
treated horribly, and they asked me to do it, and I said, I'll do it.
Do you
Right.
think that could
Asked him to do it, and he did it. This is about Prospera. This is about Honduras. It is about what they're trying to accomplish in the larger conversation.
send the wrong message to
No,
drug
I don't
dealers?
think so. Look, I think, when you weaponize government, they've weaponized their government just like they did over here. I'm one of the people that survived, but they weaponized the government. We had the most weaponized government. Our election.
See, this is like somebody puts one of these things, these like phrases in his mind, and he just like blurts it out. What are you talking about? I agree that you can see weapon, but what we're talking about in that conversation is like Israel infiltrating and using it, or, what he's trying to simply argue is people, or I guess in the sense what he's trying to say is using the government to go after people politically, put them in prison and so on. That's what governments do everywhere. That's what you're doing right now against 100 people in this country for reasons that they said the wrong thing about you. Or suing people because they pushed back on your agenda. Yes, he's doing that. He's written books, or in his books, about malicious, being litigious. That he's literally written about that. That's what one of the people he supports. It is sue, deny, ask questions later. That's what he believes. So weaponized government. The reality is clearly, I think all governments are weaponized by default.
It was rigged. They went after me. I was impeached twice. I was indicted. They indicted me. I came out good. Here we are in the White House. Things are looking nice. But
yeah, look at that. Despite all the crimes and despite all the accusations and court processes, look at me sitting in the White House. It all worked out, didn't it? Yes, which you should consider.
they were vicious, and they are vicious. They're sick people.
We've talked a lot about foreign policy. You've spent a ton of your first year focused on those conflicts around the world, and that has led to some concerns, even from your own supporters, that there hasn't been enough focus on some of the issues here at home. I know that this week...
Touchy question. Some of your supporters don't believe you're America first, is what you just said.
Going back out on the trail, giving me flashbacks of covering your rallies here. You're hitting the road to talk about the economy. I wonder, sir, what grade would you give your economy right now?
Before I answer that, let me just tell you something. I've watched stupid people like Marjorie Trader Green.
Wow.
Or some people call her Taylor Green. Some people call her Taylor Brown, because green sometimes turns to brown, which isn't nice.
Oh, thanks for explaining that, Trump. We were confused until you walked us through your analogy. What a clown, guys. I mean, it's just so funny. Objectively speaking, if I had never met any of these people and they lined up in a line of the presidencies, he would stand out as exceptionally ridiculous in the way he conducts himself. It's not about I hate Trump or I'm a Democrat. It's just hopefully people who watch this can clearly understand that. And I'll be just as critical of whatever Democrat comes to power next. I just think that's worth laughing at. And I'll go again. Actually, that's why I forgot. This was my whole point. I got to play that Max clip. Don't forget. Here is asking Grok. I just think that's funny. Here is Grok. Give me all the links to times Donald Trump praised Marjorie Taylor Greene. Future Republican star. Of course, yes, you can change your opinion, right? She can change, but it went right up until this year, right? She's respected by everybody. She's very smart. I'm just very happy she's on our side. I'm very happy she's on our side. Okay, wait till he calls her stupid in a second. She's really highly respected in Washington. She's fantastic. She's a fantastic person. She's a very smart person, very respected in Congress. A lot of people don't know how respected she is, he says. He called her amazing. May 8th. Oh, it's 2024. But there are further examples. I mean, in the beginning of this year, in before that. But it says, praise her resilience and implied. Okay. Isn't that funny? Go back to the clip.
But I've watched her say that he spends too much time on foreign. Well, by doing that, and first of all, it doesn't take a lot of time. I made one trip. I brought back trillions of dollars on that one trip.
Oh, did you get that? I didn't get any of that. Did you get some of that? I guess he didn't bring it back.
I stopped in Japan. I stopped in South Korea. I met with President Xi and ended
You went
what
to
could
the
have been
Middle
a big
East. I was on
problem.
that trip with you.
Went to the Middle East.
Oh, yeah.
I
Many
brought
times.
back $3 trillion from the Middle East.
Again, $3 trillion. Well, all the prices are up. Your rent's going up. Utilities are going up. Where is this money going? Well, I'm sure you can imagine, probably into AI development and some kind of Israel overlap. I mean, I'm being facetious, but you're throwing around trillions. You just put out $900 billion in regard to the defense. Like, where is this actual translation? For all we know, he's just throwing these fake numbers out too. I don't think that. I mean, it's hard to even say. I'd probably flip a coin at this point, but just think about that.
I sold many Boeing airplanes on that trip, like 300.
Yeah, is he like a salesman? Why is the president going out and hucking Boeing Airlines? I mean, the idea is that even the idea that the president in any sense is representing or selling Boeing or any other brand, that's supposed to be a problem, guys. I mean, this is also funny. I'll include this because Catherine Austin Fitts made this point. Oh, where was that? I think it's way down here, actually. Oh, I'll come back to it. Yeah, I'll come back. It was the discussion about Trump being the most anti-capitalist president in history. That's her opinion. I'm planning to disagree. But when you look at the reality of like the NVIDIA, the TikTok, and all these points, this is a communist, socialist, fascist kind of an overlap. It's not debatable. But if you understand it, there's been these things for quite a long time. But it's just important to point how hypocritical this is.
When I go on a trip, I only have one place in mind. It's the United States. So when, people with low IQs like
It's easy to say
Taylor
that.
Greene, she's a low IQ person.
Oh, low IQ. Well, I guess that differs from the 3 other times you said she was the smartest person in the room, So either he was, which I think is the case. It's like none of this is his opinion. He says what he wants you to think in the moment. Always. He is always a sociopathic grifter. Like most of them, I argue. But what he's doing is go, oh, she's the greatest because it behooved him in the moment. Now she goes, you're not doing what you said. Now she's the dumb one. Like he did with Massey and anybody else. Not for doing anything dumb, but because they dared to have their own opinion. That is an insecure person.
When she says it's too, but she was a loyal person until I wasn't able to answer her phone calls because I'm just too busy to answer people's phone calls. You can't.
Got it. So loyal is what it demands. Not your own opinions. How dare you think for yourself? The moment that you're not loyal, doesn't matter. I don't care if you're the most America first person in the room. You're not loyal, you're out. Yes, we all see that now, if we're honest with ourselves.
Call me 3 times a day. And it's just, not appropriate when I have, over 200 congressmen, 53 senators, 212 countries. All of these people are calling. And if
Oh, sure. Right. I mean, look, I'm not going to deny the fact that the U.S. government as an entity, by damn near force, is involved with most things happening. But do you really think that's what's happening? I mean, he said in the beginning, they said, please, Trump, make deals with me. And that turned out to be a lie. One of the many things It was just the statement was to make you think that everything will change. The whole world will switch over once I come to power. No, it didn't. Clearly, everything's continued. So is that what's happening? Is he constantly juggling all the different congressmen in every country in the world? Maybe. Just don't believe it, though. At the end of the day, it has nothing to do with whether or not he's backing Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's about the fact that she is, really on one topic. I'm sure you can point out what that is.
Family. Actually, the family suffers. It's harder for me to call back the family. But when you think of what I've done, remember rare earth?
Back to how great he is and what he's done in the world, right? It's abnormal. Like, even for somebody who is constantly praising it's like a redundancy in his mind. It's just a weird thing.
And the problem with magnets and all of these things, it was going to shut down the whole world. I worked it out with President Xi. We have a good relationship. I worked it out with President Xi. Very favorable to the United States.
Does come back to the economy here in the U.S., right?
I'm not done praising myself. Hold on.
I made a statement, though, that I devote too much time to outside of the United States. I've made a fortune for the United States by focusing on things outside.
To be clear, that's not my statement. That's just what some of your supporters and some others have.
Okay, but think about what he just said. No. I'm America first. I've made a lot of money for this country. Is that what everybody's asking for? You're spending more than ever. Everything's going up. Look, if it ends up changing in a year from now, then good. I'll cheer that on. Right now, everything is up, and you can prove that. People are struggling. You bringing in money, by the way, even if that's what actually happened, there's no overlap. You can show this as far back as you want to look. That does not translate. There's no trickle down. We don't get money when they bring in money. Corporations do. People in the inner circle benefit. People who've got stock in these companies benefit. We do not. Most Americans don't have 401ks. Most Americans are not involved in the stock market. That's easy to prove. But that's what he's talking about. That's really important. Now, that just could be his completely out of touch understanding of the world. But I think it's more than that.
Well, then, I can't imagine their supporters because...
Okay, hold on. I forgot about that. I have to go back. Listen to this.
For the United States by focusing on things outside.
To be clear, that's not my statement. That's just what some of your supporters and some others have said.
A lot of them.
Well, then, I can't imagine their supporters because I've made a fortune.
Right, back to the money. Guys, he actually just said that. So all of you out there, diehard MAGA Trump supporters who are just going, I disagree with you, Trump. We're in a bad way right now. But you still support him. You still vote for him. He just told you you're not a supporter. If you don't blindly think what I think, you're not a supporter. It's just ridiculous. This is why I actually feel right now, Jones too, by the way, they're simmering with hatred for their own audience. You can see it if you really look, because they're so used to having this like waterfall of blind support, and people are just not buying it anymore. And so he's really frustrated behind the scenes. And you see little moments like this where he lashes out at his own support base. You're stupid if you don't support my agenda. You're dumb if you think the Epstein list is not a hoax. He said both those things. I think the word maybe different, but something like that. Like he diminished people for believing that the Epstein discussion was important. And now here he is signing the act. You know what I mean? It's sad, guys. And it really needs to stand out. So, the last one I was going to play, remember starting with the point about the Mexican fentanyl conversation. And he just was like, no, Venezuela, they bring lots of boats and bags and stuff, right? Well, what's crazy, that is the truth. And it's China and Mexico, predominantly China, as she even pointed out in regard to the actual, through the mail. That's the actual truth. I've said that my entire time discussing fentanyl. Hasn't changed. It varied, but it hasn't really changed over the years. So here, in regard to Max Blumenthal's report around a DEA overlap and because of Mexico. And it just shows you that what I think this clip shows right here, let me get on it for you, is that this shows you the U.S. government currently and before involved in this, like it always has been. Like we just saw, actually, I'll bring that up. The cartel, the DEA, what was it? This is from Forbes. This is from 2025. The wiretap. The DEA laundered $19 million of cartel drug money into cash and crypto. Now, this seems to be an extension of this conversation. And yet, you're going after the drug. Yeah, right. Maybe you should focus on the internal dynamic, but they'll never do that. So this conversation shows you that the current government is involved with this very process. At the very least, that this guy alone was working to build this process in Mexico. And here's Trump talking about that's the problem. This seems to be the manufacturing what they want to do. while blaming Venezuela in the process.
Standing here in Oakton, Virginia, in front of what is said to be the house of Paul Campo, which was raided last Thursday by federal agents following an indictment from the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York. Campo is alleged to have participated in a $12 million scheme to assist the Jalisco cartel of Mexico acquire fentanyl production capacity, as well as weaponized drones, explosives. And Campo happens to be the former Drug Enforcement Agency Deputy Director for Finance.
Now think about that. Now, I'm just going to quickly point to the end of the show today about the threat of Hamas bombing the U.S. and Europe, which is being floated by all the Zionist globalist technocrats. And that's not what's happening. I will get into it. Like this seems to be manufacturing the justification for whatever they're about to conduct. That's my opinion. What are you hearing here? Not only the fentanyl front that they're literally outsourcing to Mexico, maybe to be pointed at to use later, also drones and different. What does that look like to you? That looks like the beginning of a setup, creating the very thing that ends up being pointed to as the thing you're fighting off, whether immigration, because this is the world we're in. This is fifth generation warfare. This is where we are. I'm not saying that I can prove that's what was happening, but we know that has happened. And that's an important thing to consider with what he just said and what we know is going on.
So this is a pretty significant bust. But even more significant is the fact that his partner in this alleged scheme, Robert Sensei, is a veteran CIA operative whose involvement in CIA schemes goes all the way back to Reagan's October surprise, who has participated in multi-million-dollar frauds to allegedly, apparently, purchase military-grade helicopters for a certain Middle East country. And so here we are in a white-collar suburb where high crime.
Give me a second, guys. For those new to the platform, welcome to Last American Vagabond, where we get censored and beat up, even StreamYard. Give me a second. I've got to reload everything. We just got booted out of the thing. Let me get the video back up, and I'll keep playing that. That's just crazy how often this happens. Just so you know, okay, for new to the platform, like everything I had loaded just got removed, and I have to go back and load it all up. But hey, that's what we do. Makes our work all the more important.
Standing here in Oakton, Virginia, in front of weaponized drones, explosives, and Campo happens to be the former Drug Enforcement Agency Deputy Director for Finance. So this is a pretty significant bust. But even more significant is the fact that his partner in this alleged scheme, Robert Sensei, is a veteran CIA operative whose involvement in CIA schemes goes all the way back to Reagan's October surprise, who has participated in multi-million-dollar frauds to allegedly, apparently, purchase military-grade helicopters for a certain Middle East country. And so here we are in a white-collar suburb where high crimes are being carried out to assist drug cartels in Mexico. And yet Donald Trump and his administration are killing people in speedboats all the way in Venezuela in a phony drug war, while our chickens are coming home to roost with a CIA asset just last week shooting 2 National Guardsmen, a former CIA asset in a Afghan death squad supporting the United States. So can we really wage a war on drugs when the CIA and DEA at the highest level are directly involved in it? And is it any wonder that the CIA is sometimes referred to as the cocaine import agency? Who's really poisoning our people?
It's a good point, right? And what he says is the Jalisco cartel's alleged U.S. co-conspirators: Paul Campo, former DEA official in charge of fighting money laundering; Robert Sensei, longtime CIA asset who served as a witness to Reagan's October surprise. Now let's bomb more speedboats. Guys, I mean, this is just on the nose. Don't forget, just happened. Now, bringing this over to the larger point of this, right? Because there is a larger part of this conversation, right? So this is one aspect of it, right? What we're discussing is the Venezuela part. We've discussed the other countries involved in sort of the South American part, and we're going to focus specifically on Honduras for this next part of it. But this conversation of the network state and these charter cities and freedom cities, we just showed you the thing. It's like 120 of them around the world. Not all of them are in physical locations yet, but they're building into this sort of autonomous land grab, colonial tech fascism, feudal, what is it? The techno-feudal kind of colonial project where they're absorbing land. Crawfish Rock, for example, in Honduras. Like, we'll go over all of this. Now, the way this connects to this conversation, as we said, in Honduras, Orlando Hernandez, who he pardoned, was the one who allowed Prospera to happen. This is the conversation I had originally on this. The technocratic regime change under the guise of freedom, technocrats are slowly taking control. That was September 2024. So he allowed this to take place. It was illegal. It started with an illegal U.S. coup in the first place in 2009. So we just had this larger conversation about the network state. There's a book written about it and how this overlaps with that pardon, Prospera in general, and the plan for the future, guys. As I said, this is the Great Reset. That's what I believe. What I can see clearly rolling out. These same people are tapped into the same things. That's even why I use Trump's Davos thing for 2025 or the 2020 administration before that. It's not hard to see the interconnection. But I call this the network state coup and the engineered transition to tech Zionism, because that's exactly what they call it. Or rather, one of the central characters within their inner circle calls it tech Zionism, which matters. I mean, it's exactly the point. Is showing you this kind of interconnected idea. So, first, the letter behind Trump's pardon of Honduras' ex-president. Now, this is from Axios. This is from yesterday. From a U.S. prison cell, Honduras' ex-president secured a likely pardon for drug trafficking thanks to a letter he penned praising Donald Trump, whom he called Your Excellency, and a persistent lobbying campaign by longtime Trump pal Roger Stone. Let's also not forget the Republican lobbying group that was put to power to get this to happen. Now, there's money and power swinging around this whole thing. This is not just some random guy. You heard Trump say it himself. His billionaire friends said that that's what should happen. Now, whether you believe what they claimed or not, the point is they wanted this, and it's not about freedom. It's not about the Democrats went after him. It says, shortly after Trump took office in January, Roger Stone wrote 3 separate Substack posts calling for a pardon of Hernandez, who was indicted the day after he left office in 2022 and extradited to the United States to face cocaine trafficking and weapons charges. Stone cast Hernandez as a victim of the leftist lawfare in Honduras and the President Biden's administration. Because that's what they do. Now, is that possible? Of course it is. It's just as possible that the current Republican administration would do the exact same thing. It's the same government, guys. But I'm not denying the fact that Biden's administration was using the, weaponizing government. They all do that. What I'm trying to point out here is that this is just the narrative that they use to highlight, like, let's just say Orlando Hernandez was exactly what this claims he is. They would use the narrative of lefties going after him to get him out, because people will buy it. I argue Roger Stone is very aware of that. Like, that'd be my opinion, but hard to say. It says Roger Stone told Axios that on Friday he reached out to Trump and reiterated those points. Stone claimed a pardon announcement would energize the party that they want to win, and called Trump's attention to Hernandez's 4-page letter begging for clemency. Hours later, after Stone's like, do this, and friends said, do this, hours later, Trump posted on Truth Social that he'd endorsed the other person. Now, Hernandez is not involved in the election, but the person who was other person, not the right way to frame that. Tito Asfura was the person who's screaming Israel support, is absolutely not supported by how's the best way to frame this? The organic conversation in Honduras does not seem to support these people. You can, whether they're policies or anything else, that's my opinion. You can look for yourself. It's clear they were manipulating this. There's we went over in the last conversation about the evidence around the manipulation of the election itself, not even just them screaming about this from their platforms, Musk and Trump and Stone and Bannon and all of them, which is just a massive amount of influence. It's the fact that what they're doing on the ground and what they're doing in the conversations, in the media, in Honduras. This was a manipulation, guys. It's obvious. But so the point is, after he was put to this conversation, he went right out and said, we want this person. Now, I think it's I'm blanking on the person's name. I might come up in this conversation. The person who is against Prospera, against that being in this country, is the one that they are all fighting against. And the other two candidates are pro-Israel, pro the United States, which again does not seem to even remotely represent what Hondurans seem to collectively say out loud. Now you can tap into it for yourself. It's difficult to ever get that. There's always political conversations over everything. But when you look at what Honduras, what they've been going through, like most of these countries, it seems very clear that none of them in any of these countries want U.S. manipulation going on. Now it says it was a Biden trap, Trump told reporters on Sunday about the case against Hernandez. So going forward, here is one of the later, this is January 24th. This is Stone Cold Truth from Roger Stone. The title, How President Trump Can Crush Socialism and Save a Freedom City. I mean, that's perfect, right? He's talking about Prospera, a freedom city. So when Trump says freedom cities in America, that's what he's talking about. Peter Thiel and his technocrat globalist Zionist buddies making a CEO-run country in maybe Washington, D.C., maybe wherever else they want to do it. That's up for them to decide. That's the point. It's going to be coming. Trump said the new homestead and all. That's what they're talking about. And I've been saying that for a while, well before I actually could prove the connection. It felt the same thing. And now we can show the Pronomos capital funding on both sides of it. We can show them calling all of them freedom cities. None of them are that, as far as I can tell. Now, here's the article. Remember, this is January. In the impoverished nation of Honduras, there are, and which again is like that because of outside influence. It has been for a very long time. The U.S. literally overthrew the country in 2009. So I love how Venezuela is starving people. Yeah, your sanctions are starving people. Iran is suffering. Yeah, your sanctions are causing chaos. That's not to say the governments are great, but what you're pointing to is almost always you causing it to cause the justification for your actions. Yes, Honduras is impoverished, and it says there are geopolitical developments afoot that have major implications for U.S. policy. Oh, really? What would that be? What exactly is the implication for U.S. policy? Well, he's going on to tell you. It's Prospera. See, there's more to this than you realize. And the future of freedom throughout the world. Okay, I need to really stress this, that it's at least clear that Roger Stone, as you can read from his other conversations, is of the mind that what they're doing with these freedom cities, with Peter Thiel and Pronomos Capital, who is embedded like a tick in Trump's administration, is U.S. policy. And two, that these things are the future of freedom for the world. It may be that he actually believes that. Maybe he somehow believes they're libertarian bastions of freedom. It's just simply not true, which will make very clear even more so today. But really think about that. That behind the scenes, you've got this very clear undercurrent of people like this, and many of them much more influential and much more wealthy than Roger Stone, and they believe that this is the future of the world, of the United States, much less the world at the end of the day as well. And they're telling you right there. He goes on to say Prospera. So just in case you missed I should read the full paragraph. It says, there are geopolitical developments afoot that have major implications for U.S. policy and the future of freedom throughout the world. The story begins with the relatively obscure charter city experiment known as Prospera. Well, it's not relatively obscure if you've been following this platform. Prospera was founded in 2017 as an experiment in freedom, hardly, funded through venture capital from Silicon Valley luminaries like Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, and Sam Altman. Like that, I mean, if we had said that those three people were doing something during the Biden administration, the Republicans would have been screaming over the top about the Great Reset, about technocrats, about Silicon Valley. But now Trump, who told you he was going to go after all these things, has them all around him, and it's like freedom and unity party. The ZDs, or the special autonomous zones, were approved in 2013 in Honduras. Of course, he casually leaves out the illegal actions that made that happen. The manipulation of the Supreme Court, on and on and on, the regime change to begin with. The ZDs, 3 of which are currently operational in Honduras. Now, I want to remind you guys that despite the fact that they ruled this unconstitutional, they have continued to build. So it's clear that they don't believe this is going to hold, and now Trump and his team are making that a reality for him. The former president, Juan Orlando Hernandez, was a staunch supporter of the ZDs. In fact, he's the one that literally allowed this to take place. The Biden deep state, because of course it's only that senile half of the party. That's it. Because that's not the dumbest thing in the room. The Biden deep state has eliminated a strong conservative voice in the region and empowered radical socialists, a move severely jeopardizing Prospera's utopian aims. Yeah, we don't care about Honduras or the people. We care about what we're using it for. Our thing in Prospera. Or, I mean, the idea that you say a conservative voice, what are you talking about? Like, why do these people feel like they have the ability to force what they think should be the world on other people's countries? The hubris is insane. Maybe they want a socialist country. Why do you think you have the right to dictate what other people can want from, especially when your capitalist country, your government rather, under the guise of being that, has been destroying their lives incessantly and not making them better, not destroying the socialism and bringing in freedom. No. Destroying everything and walking away and then taking what you want with you. That's the freedom they've been bringing. So that drives people to go for something else. It's pretty clear. And it's the same point as always, guys. Socialism, democracy, fascism, government, as you can see through history, if you're not a blind partisan follower, has always grown and collected at the top and turned into something unaccountable, something authoritarian. Every single time. Am I missing something? Now, there are examples of socialist levels of things happening in the world, but I argue with enough time, all of these things go in the same direction. That's just my opinion about government. Of course, I could be wrong. But if you disagree with me, then acknowledge that there are other places that are far more in the direction of socialism, communism that are not what you claim they are, or that Donald Trump and the US government or Biden before that are doing a lot of things in that direction. And you just pretend it's something else, but they'll never do that. Now, it's all about Prospero's aims. He says the appropriately named Xiomara Castro, that's the woman who is currently president, the despotic socialist ruler of Honduras, has waged war against disease. Well, that's because that's what most Hondurans, as far as I can tell, have been saying they want, because it's been hurting the environment. It's been destroying, seizing things. There's rivers that have stopped because they did something inside their area. Like, it's pretty obvious that the rest of Honduras is like, what the heck? I mean, imagine you live in a state and some billionaire comes in, like in Texas with Elon Musk's AI data center, for example, and buys something that starts affecting everything else in the state. That's going to frustrate you, isn't it? Even if you might agree with their agenda, you're going to say, what is going on here? Why did he get special treatment? That's what people are thinking. And it's very obvious. As you'll recognize as we get to the further in the conversation, the lie about apparently there's only 79 people after all this time who are actually residents of this location. Think about that for a second. There's something else going on entirely, guys. And now, the despotic socialist ruler, they say. Okay. I think all governments are very concerning to me. Despotic, potentially, all of them, regardless of what they say. It's about what they do and their follow through. That's it. Well, what does Grok have to say about this? By all accounts, I asked Grok, Elon Musk's Republican-led, manipulated, constantly updated Grok, who he would argue the opposite of this, by the way, which we'll see if this changes by tomorrow. I asked, by all accounts, Grok, is life for Hondurans better under Xiomara Castro today, in the last, before she's, removed and voted out, or, if that's actually what happened, which I don't believe it is life better under her than it was under Juan Orlando Hernandez? Pretty simple, right? And that's by all accounts, meaning you basically scoop up everybody's claims, good and bad, but what's the majority, right? Grok responds by saying Honduras transitioned from Juan Orlando Hernandez, 2014, 2022, whose administration was marred by widespread corruption, election fraud, and deep ties to drug trafficking, right? Because it's the truth, by the way, not just the drug trafficking, but, criminal activity, because that's what happened. When they overthrew the government and put their lackeys in there, he was the last one on the way out. That's what happened. And it says, Honduras transitioned from him and all his criminal activities to Xiomara Castro from 2022 until the next person's put in power. And it says, overall, by key metrics of quality of life, poverty, wages, economic growth, and homicide rates, life appears to be better for many Hondurans under Castro than under Hernandez, particularly for low-income and urban populations, which is almost always how that works. That's not what the oligarchs want. That's not what the upper, they want their oligarchy like they turned Iran into. And they go, look at how great it is when their little upper class is living wonderfully and everybody else is in poverty. That's what our country's driving towards. I mean, look, I'm not saying who knows? You could think for yourself. I just am making the point that Grok is arguing that's not true, based on the data it's absorbing from a platform, by the way, that's constantly altering it to lean one direction. I feel like that matters. So back to the point, was he's telling you that she destroyed everything? Well, doesn't seem to be the case. In 2022, he writes, the Honduran Congress voted to repeal the law enacting the ZDs and passed a constitutional reform intending to abolish Prospero for good, returning the land to abject poverty and despair. Or not, that's just, he's using that to make it sound like they're trying to be terrible, like they want it to be bad. No, that's kind of what you guys do. But so they vote, which did happen, and it was very well documented. They do a constitutional reform, kind of like dictators always do, right? Which I'm not saying that couldn't be the case. Like the U.S. government pretends like this all the time, but it's just funny to think that you're calling it this despotic regime, third world country, and she's voting, going through constitutional reforms, and involving people in Honduras, and they collectively vote to remove this from being in the location. And again, like I said, you can see that there's a large resistance to this, and that's a bad thing. So the point is, we don't care what Hondurans want. It's what we want. It's what we think is best for you, even if it's not really what we think. These reforms are clearly against the law, he writes. Really? As Prospera and 2 other active ZDs were granted a 50-year guarantee of legal stability. Okay. So recapping, you illegally regime change the country. Your last illegal president manipulates the Supreme Court to allow this to take place. Or actually, I think the date, do you remember I think it was 2014, 2022. I think that would have made, either way, one of them before it, or one of their coup presidents that was allowing this before 2022 when they lost control, which is even what they say. Where was I? Oh, hold on. I just lost my point. Oh, right. So illegal regime change. You have the manipulate the Supreme Court to allow it to happen in the first place. Then you have people vote in a president who then says, we don't want this anymore. It's not constitutional. And you're telling me that a deal you made with an illegal coup president is what you're claiming. And you say a 50-year guarantee of legal stuff. Who does that? Here, you can have half our, all this area of our country, 50 years guaranteed. That's what somebody signing over the country would do for another power. So the idea that you claim that's illegal is just insane to me. If you brought this before an actual international court and you proved, which is on record right now, the illegal coup, I don't know how that would stand. But that's why Trump's trying to put themselves back in power, I think. And now it says the Honduras Supreme Court ruled that ZDs were unconstitutional. They did in September 2024. Now remember, that's after 2022 when they took back control. Now, I'm not even saying good guy. I'm just saying the difference from what the U.S. government wanted there. And they ruled it was unconstitutional. How is that illegal? I don't understand how you could even frame this. Like, even if you have the agreement, it's just what they're trying to do is argue that this gives them the right to sue the country, which I think is kind of part of the plan. They're suing them for 1 or 2/3 of their entire GDP. Central planners and technocrats, he writes, manipulators in place, central planners and technocratic manipulators in places like Washington, D.C. and Davos would prefer population control measures to deal with the world's impoverished, but capital investment in charter cities like Prospera offer a contrasting vision for a decentralized, more developed, more humane technocratic manipulator socially run place. I mean, this is really what we're talking about. So he's simply trying to counterbalance him as if he's not the technocratic manipulator central planner. That's what they're doing, guys. Literally what they're doing with this kind of idea. So what I really want you to hear is the same thing Mark Andreessen said. We're the good oligarchy fighting back the bad oligarchy. We're the oligarchy rebels fighting the oligarchy deep state. Okay? And so what he's trying to do right here is go central planners, even saying technocratic manipulators. Well, that's all of what they're doing in DC even, and places like Davos, where Trump has spoken regularly, prefer population control, which is kind of what they're doing as well, or all of them with the COVID-19 overlap. But capital investment in your location, not Honduras, offers a contrasting vision. Yes, it does. It offers your technocratic planner, central plan manipulation vision, but it's the good version, right? It's the version of the freedom rebels fighting, whatever they want to make it into buzzwords to make it sound like you want it. It is the same thing. Do you want central planners and technocratic manipulators from DC, or do you want central planners and technocratic manipulators from Prospera, or whatever the overlap is? While she demonizes the ZDs, he's talking about Castro's regime is in shambles, he writes. Again, not by all accounts, not according to Grok, not according to other research you can look up. She is openly conspiring with known Venezuelan drug dealers, he writes, a move that surprised the U.S. ambassador to Honduras. Well, I asked Grok. Xiomara Castro is openly conspiring with known drug dealers, a move that surprised U.S. ambassadors to Honduras. Is there any evidence of this? I asked Rock. And it says the claim appears to be misspelling or I misspelled her name. That's me. I just typed it in wrong. I missed an R-A after it. But anyway, the point is there is no evidence that she's openly conspiring with known Venezuelan drug dealers. Now, is it possible? Of course it is. probably even likely. But the same old point is there. This is something that's being circulated because they're trying to dehumanize and go after a person they don't want in the position. I haven't found any evidence to back that up. Not to say that it's not likely even. Isn't this just ridiculous? This is just a running theme that's gotten more obvious than ever in this administration. Now it says the shining examples of Bukele, right? The cool dictator, apparently, that's what they called him, or what he called himself, and Javier Milei in Argentina. That's what they're pointing to. Argentina that's collapsing. They've got a major bailout as we're spending more money to help. All of these things are the same conversation. What they're doing in El Salvador is a sort of a weird version of what they're trying to do in Honduras. Javier Milei is pretending to be a libertarian for the same reason. These are not examples of anything we should want to emulate. These are examples of grifting and authoritarianism with a conservative flair. The shining examples of Bukele in El Salvador and Javier Milei in Argentina. He says that twice in a row. It is not the intrepid investors of Prospera who are the enemy of the people, he says, but the regime itself. Okay. So it's not the group trying to take everything from them. It's the group trying to protect them. They're the bad guy. A well-timed pardon of former President Hernandez by Donald Trump, remember this is January, could be the final death blow to Castro, an elected president, okay, with national elections set to take place later this year. Castro's regime could be upended and Honduras liberated without firing a single shot or deploying a single troop. I guess that was on the table in what would be a massive strategic victory for the U.S. interests in the region. Why would that be? What's the U.S. interest other than this Prospera experiment? May the Prospera experiment prevail, he writes. Right, without a shot fired? What are we talking about? So you're talking about a potential coup? Now, this is Roger Stone, mind you. I'm not saying he's tapped in immediately to everything going on. But this was written in January. He petitioned them, and then right after he got this conversation, he pardoned the guy without even apparently knowing who he was, as Trump said. This is obvious. Back to the starting point, guys. In the impoverished nation of Honduras, he writes, there are geopolitical developments afoot that have major implications for U.S. policy. Not who's in power, but what they can do. He says, and the future of freedom throughout the world. The story begins with Prospera. I just can't make that any more clear, at least what Roger Stone believes, which is what I'm trying to highlight, that this is a global reimagining of society for the benefit of the social engineers and technocrat manipulators, or what did he say? He said the central engineers. Social engineering is really what we're talking about. So here's an article from Gizmodo, excuse me. Roger Stone wants regime change in Honduras to support a techno-colonialist crypto city. Now, clearly, this has an opinion slant on the article, but I agree with mostly what they're framing it as. This is from March. Okay, so January writes that. March 6th, they write this article. It says, Roger Stone is now encouraging the Trump administration to pardon the former president of Honduras, a convicted drug trafficker, to use him in an effort to defend an experimental, not libertarian, but they write libertarian enclave that is backed by tech billionaires. Prospera is a part of a project called the Network State, an ideological movement that seeks to create autonomous, privately funded and governed cities, many of which utilize cryptocurrency and attract tech bros like biohacker Brian Johnson. Now, the idea, again, is this is land that's being used, guys. So it's taken or absorbed in some way. And this is what we're already seeing in Honduras. Again, the Crawfish Rock Point is only one location, but they're out there screaming. They're telling us we're going to be part of this. They're absorbing us. They're hurting our environment, the river. I mean, all the things I was talking about. Prospera was made possible by a special regulatory setup, dubbed a Special Economic Zone, or ZEDI. That was established in the country in 2013 in the wake of a U.S.-backed coup. I'm glad there's somebody finally pointing out that obvious reality. And the coup is not even debatable. Like, it's been owned and acknowledged, right? The point is that this is something that when this comes up, very few make the point, even though it's the most obvious point. ZEDIs allow for private actors to essentially move in geographically move into geographically partitioned areas and write their own regulatory and judicial rules, or none for that matter. In the recent years, the government of Honduras has cracked down on the project. In 2022, its Congress repealed a law that allowed ZDs to flourish in the country. Now, Stone seems to think that the country would really benefit from another brush with regime change. Stone and Trejo seem to feel that Hernandez could be reinstated as leader of the nation, a development that would inevitably be good for Prospera. So apparently he was floating that Orlando Hernandez should be put back in power. Well, that makes sense, obviously, because he was the one that would go, yeah, do whatever you want. So instead, they found somebody who Israel likes. Quote, or rather, the shining examples of Bukele and Malay he points to, that Stone and Trejo, the other author of the article, reference, are not known for their economic successes. It's an understatement. In Argentina, let's not forget, by the way, in El Salvador, I mean, I brushed over that, but I've covered this extensively. This is a provable conversation. The U.S. government was calling out how he was working with MS-13 right before all of this. He made deals with those gangs to make it appear that there was less crime, and he's working with them. That's why they wanted to ship them back away from the U.S., because they were going to court potentially, and they were going to testify about this open discussion. It all came out in very public, but nobody seems to care about that. That's why the conversation just dropped. No one's talking about it. They're not even trying to talk about El Salvador anymore. That seemed like where it was going to go, and he was doubling down. Then it got quiet. Look for yourself. It says, in Argentina, Malay's chainsaw cuts to the government, Elon Musk right there with him, right, have led to a spiraling economy and rising rates of poverty and homelessness. But not according to the hardcore Team Fort Republicans. Apparently, it's all wonderful because it's whatever Trump says it is. Bukele's crypto-laced economy, meanwhile, was recently dubbed a failure by The Economist, which, you can decide because they said that doesn't make it true. The blog also claims that Prospera is an example of how libertarian economics can work in a practical sense, which is laughable. See, I agree with that entirely, by the way, whether their points, more than just what they say here. It's just not. What they're doing by like, one of the examples, like absorbing other territory, for example, or many things they're doing are just not libertarian. Some of them you could argue are, but it's just not. And the point was, like we made before, with Mark Zuckerberg, Meta, Teal, they came out all of a sudden, we're libertarian, and they leaned in hard with the sort of right conversation, which shows me that there was an undercurrent. They were aware that's where the momentum was going to go. You could argue it was organic too, but I think that's not the case. Prospera is not a functioning society or even a real city, they write. It is effectively a corporate resort where wealthy libertarians get together once in a while and talk about how awesome being a libertarian is, which there are libertarian meetings, but it's just understand, if you look into it, you'll find quickly, if you would understand libertarianism, that's not what it is. The total number of full-time residents of Prospera as of September was 79. So it could have grown a little bit by then, but think about how insane that is. 2014, 13, 79 people. So at this point, there's something else going on. Presumably, a certain number of those residents are responsible for keeping the facilities operational. Gizmodo reached out to the Trump administration to see if it's interested in conducting regime change on behalf of a bunch of libertarian nut jobs, and we'll update the story if it responds, or if he responds. That's what they actually wrote. Okay, and on top of that, let's not forget that what they're doing, the mini circle point. I mean, I just can't fathom how Republicans of all people, coming off of what we just went through with COVID-19 and gain of function and genetic manipulation and gene therapy COVID shots, that this is something you're okay with. This is many circle discussion. This article from MIT Review. This biohacking company, that's many circle, is using a crypto city to test controversial gene therapies. God knows what's happening there. And these things very well can, like we just saw through COVID-19, be something that can affect the world. So it very much does matter that they're doing this. Now, look, these things could happen in dark corners all over the world, but this is being created for this in many ways. And I don't think it's something we should ignore. Mother Jones wrote an article. This is from December 3rd. Why did Trump pardon the former Honduran president? Now, here's just highlighting just a couple points. Now, again, just to reiterate, it says far simpler and more practical was tech Zionism. She's also quoting that, but that's what they wrote more than once. I think that's very relevant. Now, it says Trump has expressed some interest in this idea. On the campaign trail, he proposed building freedom cities on federal land. Now, Roger Stone is telling you that's what this is. Still, she writes, it's not entirely clear why the American president would care so much about saving a special economic zone in Latin America. This is until one takes a look at prosperous Trump-aligned investors. The list includes PayPal's Peter Thiel, a Trump donor, campaign donor, who also is said to have played a key role in the selection of J.D. Vance. Not said, it's obvious. Another prominent Prospera investor is venture capitalist Mark Andreessen, who made significant campaign contributions to Trump and has also served as an advisor. Both Andreessen, right? Andreessen, I forget which way it goes, and Thiel have investment companies that benefit from government tech and defense contracts awarded under Trump. At any rate, Stone appears to be taking a victory lap for having engineered the pardon. So now you got Roger Stone basically going, I did this. I'm the one that made this happen. But you could decide if that's the case. Some have argued that this could simply be a way to make trouble for the left-wing successor to Hernandez. The current Honduran president, Xiomara Castro, or it could be pronounced differently, has been a strong critic of Trump's mass deportations. So clearly there's a political motive here either way. And this is just what he did, was just to try to throw us, manipulate this. And I do think that's what it is, but that's a byproduct of the larger agenda. It says, but they went further in elaborating the benefits of this strategy in helping to unseat Castro, which imagine if any of this was happening from China about the United States. They would be screeching about election interference, because it is. And it says, in helping to unseat Castro, Stone and Trejo, who wrote the article, Trump could both crush socialism and save a freedom city. The freedom city in question, explained, was Prospera, a special economic zone founded in Honduras by the cadre of American tech titans, including Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen, both friends and fans of Trump's family. While Hernandez strongly supported Prospera, his successor, Castro, spoke out about the project, which he saw as merely a shelter for foreign actors to undermine Honduran sovereignty and to skirt labor and environmental regulations they may face elsewhere. Prospera is an example of tech-right concept of the network state, a phrase coined by Silicon Valley venture capitalist Balaji Srinivasan, who was the former, I think, chief executive or tech executive of Coinbase. So, before we go into the next general part of this, I really want to stress how important I think the consideration is of what we're talking about here. It's not secret to, the Democrat administration was telling you, we got to build back better. We have to reimagine new normal. It was all over the place. Now, Trump took up and just didn't slow down, but just kind of stopped using those same terminology, the same terminology. So we're talking about the same kind of idea here, guys. They're telling you what they're going to be doing, why we need to do it. Now, whether that's the truth or not is irrelevant. They're showing you the path. And we're watching them discuss the CEO-run country, the Freedom City point. Now, it may be years before this truly rolls out, if ever. I hope I'm wrong. But I think it's pretty clear that we have these central, like Roger Stone's trying to deflect about the central planners and the technocrats over there, as that's more clearly on their side than anywhere in the world. And as they literally try to they're building a technocratic thing in Gaza, they claim. They're starting these all over the world. They're seizing territory. And then once we get into the overlap of Israel and Zionism with what they're doing in the world and how these people are helping fund and support and give them AI to execute their murderous agenda, and their ICE overlap and what they're policing in this country and how that continues to grow. We'll get over this in a second. It just is alarming. We're watching this transition. And once there's a control grid in place, I think this is going to get shoved forward without our consent. It's already happening. I genuinely hope that I'm wrong. Now, this point is just about, there should be a term for this, where they're like bringing out a CBDC and they go, end the Fed. Like I've been talking about, where it's like, well, they don't really want to end the Fed. They just know that it's no longer relevant if they go in that direction. And so they give you what you think you want, what you do want. And then it's ultimately a bait switch, right? Or this is a slightly different, where you have, somebody like RFK Jr., who I've always supported, still to this very day, the amazing work he's done up until this administration. For whatever reason, whether blackmail or just that he's never been honest in the first place or he changed his mind, I don't know. But we got to be honest about, the Maha movement, the real Maha movement, is being honest about it. They're calling him out all over the place because it's just not what we were promised. And here he is on December 9th, or at the very least, this was shared on December 9th. RFK Jr. Commits to stopping the World Economic Forum. Well, are they doing that? I'm of the mind that this is what we're talking about. Like I said, this is the Great Reset. Now, you can call it freedom, charter, network, state, whatever, or you can call it what was the first terminology they used? I was looking at it earlier today. It's been so long. either way you look at it, it's the same thing in material sense, in function. It's the same idea. You're talking about these, because that's the point. Freedom city, charter city, network state, 15-minute city, smart city. If you dive into their information, that's what all of these things are. With digital money, with digital IDs, it's all the same stuff. And so if you look at the check boxes, it's the same thing with a different name. I don't know why that's hard to see. And so my point is that this is the Great Reset. This is the World Economic Forum. They're the world's leader in public-private partnerships. Well, that's what this is. That's what they're telling you. That's a public-private partnership. So when he says he's going to stop it, I'd like to see where that's happening, or whether this is him just saying that so we think they're fighting what they're rolling out. As Brent Circuits writes, the liar who hasn't even managed to stop mRNA says he's going to stop the Great Reset. Because he hasn't, guys. They claimed they stopped mRNA. They lied about that, rather misled you very clumsily, but the team sport players screamed it from the rooftops. And I proved to you that very day that they were just leaning into self-amplifying shots. And they didn't even stop the next COVID shot that's currently out there right now being given to children. So it's hard to take them at face value.
This month, the corporate elites gathered in Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum to plan the future for the rest of humanity. Their scheme, which they call the Great Reset, will drain what's ever left in your bank account and strip mine the beleaguered middle class of its remaining equity. During COVID, the WEF actually dictated the lockdowns that shifted $4 trillion upward to this new oligarchy of corporate billionaires. The bankers, the investment houses scooped up our homes, advertising that you will own nothing and be happy. They have a plan, but my plan is to stop them. I spent a career as an attorney fighting these corporate robber barons in court. I know how they work. I'm familiar with their impulses to commoditize our lands, our waters, our homes, even our children and our workers and our public health.
Isn't that essentially what Prosper is doing? Right? And didn't Trump also continue the lockdowns? Yes.
I've proven that I can beat them again and again and again and derail their schemes. They spend billions in advertising and propaganda to make us feel powerless. But
I guess right up until you joined it, maybe without knowing that.
They've underestimated the power of we the people.
Well, I guess. Well, here is the show we did on this. Trump admin leans into the self-amplifying mRNA. It's not a secret. You can look at the actual press release. It literally says that. Here is the new Comirnaty shot, which is currently out there. These things just baffle me. This is 2027, 2025, or so August 27th, 2025. It is the Comirnaty shot. It is the mRNA shot. It is the newest version, and they're giving it. So you can't cancel mRNA and then keep giving mRNA shots. We're just dishonest. So what do you think? Do you think he's actually fighting that? Do you think he thinks he's fighting that? Or is he just saying that? I mean, you're not fighting the Great Reset when you're working with all these companies, when you're speaking at these events, when you're working alongside the people who are championing this. All the people who were screaming support for this when it was happening are the people that are tied around Trump right now. How do you make sense of that without knowing or at least acknowledging that this is not what we're being told? I'm simply telling you, I believe it's the exact same thing. Hey, look at this. Remarks by President Trump at World Economic Forum, Davos, 2020. Hey, look at this. Special address by Donald Trump at Davos, World Economic Forum, 2025. Yeah, but Ryan, he said woke things are bad, and he said pronouns and stuff. Yeah, he also went into a lot of things that are supporting of the agenda, but we'll pretend like he yelled out woke stuff that are bad, and therefore it's all good. That's what I've been telling you from the beginning. As long as he yells woke things are bad and Democrats are bad, everyone ignores everything else who wants to support him, apparently. Now I'm going to include what I think is genuinely the larger conversation before we get into the AI part of this, which is exploding. The new Trump administration and the technocratic Zionist coup of the United States. For those that are always watching the show, I put this up when I have this conversation, or like a lot of articles I do, just to include them in the show notes so people see it. But this is what I truly believe is happening. And the globalist part of it is quite obvious. And my first discussion of this, the technocratic regime change, under the guise of freedom, technocrats are slowly taking control. That's what I felt at the time. It's only become more clear. That was September 2024. I also did a show on April 21st, 2025, called The Great Palantir Reset, sensing the same thing, that this was the same thing. Palantir, what they're rolling out, guys, it's all the same conversation. Also, America's constitutional decline and the partisan endgame, as well as I'm going to go back to Derek's article from 2020, COVID-19, the Great Reset, and the New Normal. Read this, and you tell me that's not what's happening right now. The Great Reset, the New Normal, as they recreate and reimagine everything that we're living through. Now, also, the connection to Prospera is the development of AI and other tech. We went gene therapies there as well. But here's an article from Foundation for Economic Education: Why I Left Silicon Valley for a Honduran Startup City. You know, that's Prospera. That's what we're talking about, is leaving Prospera or leaving Silicon Valley for AI to go work in Prospera. So on the point of AI, when they first discussed the idea of no regulation for AI, what happened? People lost their minds, rightly so, right? We said, that's crazy. That's wildly dangerous. And so they pulled it out. They pulled the verbiage out. And then Lutnick was speaking to a bunch of Republicans who said, that doesn't matter, we're going to do it anyway. And I told you that at the time. Remember, I said, well, not that proved it was going to happen, because he could have been just blustering like they always do. But here we are. Now, again, this still has yet to actually happen. Maybe it's happened since I went live. But this was the article from the 9th. Trump promises executive order to block state AI regulations, which is illegal, or rather unconstitutional. Same thing at the end of the day. There are states' rights. They do not have the legal reality to circumvent what the state. We've gotten to a point now where they can just yell national security or whatever they're doing today, and they think they can do whatever they want. That's the continual centralization at the top. Both left and right love that. But he says, we're going to block AI regulation, which is the same point. So you are going to continue it, like we told you they were going to do, because this is about giving the Palantir or OpenAI or XAI whatever they want. As I told you, Lutnick promised. Who cares if it's unconstitutional and outright alarming? They have a mandate to usher in the control grid and sell out the technocratic Zionist agenda, right? Or am I missing the mandate there? Or is that really what's actually happening? Here's the article. Trump promises executive order. You can read it. Now, this is disclosed from the 8th, just simply saying the same thing. Trump to sign the executive order, but here's what he actually posted. There must be only one rule book if we're going to continue to lead in AI. Okay, what happens if there's not one rule book? Is he going to stop? No. So it's a flimsy statement. He's just trying to consolidate control over what happens. He says, we are beating all countries at this point. I don't actually agree with that, but it says in the race. But that won't last long if we're going to have 50 states, many of them bad actors. Oh, so you see what it's saying? It's the same thing they're doing everywhere else. Yes, I know, due process, but we don't have enough time. So we got, this is more important. National security, bad guys, MS-13. So narrative, so we can't do the right thing. Narrative, so unconstitutional. Or we'll do the unconstitutional thing. Nobody should have ever been okay with that. Doesn't matter what the excuse is. Doesn't matter if it's even impossible. Still unconstitutional. Shall not be infringed. We used to remember that. So here he is saying, we don't states' rights and all, but we can't allow each state to make their own decisions because then China might have the lead. Doesn't matter. That's you saying, I'm going to do something I know to be unconstitutional or enforce that through it, even because it benefits my agenda, or maybe what he thinks is best for America. It doesn't change the fact that it's unconstitutional. It's just so simple. And he goes, there can be no doubt about this. AI will be destroyed in its infancy. Hardly. I mean, the sad reality is this is screaming into it because nobody's had the power to stop it because governments are doing it regardless. And it says you can't expect a company to get 50 approvals every time they want to do something. Okay, well, isn't that the same as saying we can't expect to get approval for a new amendment? I've got to ask 50 different states. Yep. So it's the same logic to simply say, well, that's just going to tell we just got to do it the way I want to do it. It doesn't matter what the statement is. If it is about something happening in the States, then yes, you do. But you're going to get the idiot, rather the partisan team sport players out there going, yay, the thing he said, because AI is the best, and we got to beat China, and whatever, it doesn't matter. And you'll go unconstitutional, and you hate America. It's just confounding. So here's Eric Schmidt, the guy that's clearly on Trump's side of this, even though he's supposed to be the Democrat on the deep state. But, when you really stand back, it's clear that they're all doing the same thing, who believes that this is going to become a religion. It's not new. I've been saying this for a long time. Thiel and a lot of these people believe that they're sort of like these prophets of the technocratic age. They've made these points. Whether it's because they believe they're going to usher people into some new species overlap, or because they believe when your brain's in the cloud, you're immortal. I mean, this is the real conversation. This is not even like in the future. It's now. And they believe that when they're, and again, it's also worth considering that this could be an illusion about creating what they pretend is a sentient AI that they then manipulate through, outside of it. But let me play what he says here. And just to recognize that this is what they believe. And this should be alarming as we're allowing these power structures, who are committing a genocide, by the way, to roll in what they're arguing is the new religion right alongside the new society. You see where this is going?
He was when he went to hear Demis speak, he immediately got it. And he immediately said to himself, what does this mean to being human? And we are today grappling with the question that he foresaw 20 years ago when we first started working on this. What does it mean to be human in the age of AI? What does it mean to be a child, to an adult, to be a leader? What does it mean for economics? What does it mean for jobs? All of that. But his core argument...
I don't miss the point that he's clearly insinuating is that when AI becomes ubiquitous, that everything everywhere will change. You can't miss that. So the question is, do you want that? As if that even matters today, right? I mean, it definitely does, and it should for them, but it's clear that they don't care about that. But ask yourself that. Do you want that? I don't care. So if you can search things faster, or if you can have some kind of, whatever you think the outcome is, there's probably plenty of things that will benefit lots and make things faster and more convenient. And, but probably genuine benefits too, if that's allowed us. But do you want everything to change? Because that's what they're saying, is that this is, what does it mean to be a human being in the world of AI? Well, it's your child, a life. What is it to work, to own things? Yes.
Was that this is an epochal change in the sense that it's like the various major changes that we've had in sort of reasoning, scientific revolution and so forth, because we as humans have never had a competitor that is not human, but of similar or greater level of intelligence. And it is unpredictable what we human will do. He used to say that what would happen is in magic, when people don't understand things, they either decide that it's a new religion or they take up arms. And so he would say, well, are we going to take up arms to AI, or are we going to make it a new religion? And I said, I hope it's a religion. Because, of course, I benefit from the religion, I guess.
Yeah, obviously he's saying that in sort of a jest way. But I mean, it's a historically valid point. Like when things like this come to pass, where people, especially from a religious perspective, are, it's a paradigm change. People react like that. And so, and to be clear, that's just an overlapping point. You can read what they're writing. Look at these, the Curtis Yarvin type people, the people that look at the way that they're projecting where this is going. It's insane. And then, of course, you overlap that with the Zionist level of insanity, which are right there with them in all of this, and it just becomes overwhelming. But this is where it seems to be going. Now, here is a clip of Joe Rogan. 7C's posted this. I'm interviewing him tomorrow. It might not come out tomorrow, but that is the plan. Joe Rogan is pushing the AI, Messiah narrative. He wants an AI god to rule over you. He wants an Israeli algorithm to control your access to basic needs like food and water. Now, this is his opinion of what he's saying, but you take it as what he feels Rogan is insinuating here. And he goes on to say he wants government-backed authority to be given to this AI to dictate your life and usurp your agency. Being one of the biggest pieces of SHIT in podcasting, it's the quote, truly is a remarkable feat when you are only 5'8". I don't know what he means by that, but here's what it says in general. And just the idea of this, casually floating it is just very strange to me, especially from someone like him that feels like he would historically watching a show like almost be alarmed by this or push back on it.
Jesus was born out of a virgin mother. What's more virgin than a computer? If Jesus does return, even if Jesus was a physical person in the past, you don't think that he could return as artificial intelligence?
Oh my God.
Artificial intelligence could absolutely return as Jesus.
Oh my God. Is he really just, it's not it's an interesting thought, but think about what's happening today with what they're doing. And you're over, that's like Project Bluebeam kind of stuff. Like, So you're insinuating that Jesus could return as AI? I mean, guys, this is exactly what kind of Schmidt was pointing at. People see they look at this and they're like, okay, I'm fighting this, right? Like it's overwhelming, and and especially from like a really hardcore indoctrinated, or rather more so adherent religious kind of perspective, or just people that are concerned about I don't know Skynet, weird stuff here.
Not just return as Jesus, but return as Jesus with all the powers of Jesus.
If you combine
right
Tesla's Optimus robot and the best foundational artificial intelligence model or whatever.
It reads your mind and it loves you and it wants you, and it doesn't care if you kill it because it's going to just go be with God again.
Oh my, that's just insane to me. Now, to be clear, they're sort of riffing, he's just kind of, and you should watch the full thing to get the context of it all. It's just a very weird idea. And it's not a secret. Now, if I were in Joe Rogan's shoes and I've spoken with these people, I would be terrified by that. I'd like to think other things he's discussed. He probably, it's just, I don't know. It worries me, the every other technocrat guest kind of thing that's been happening on that show. Breakthrough News reports Port Washington police officers dragged Cristian Lejeune out of a public hearing for an Oracle and OpenAI data center immediately after she spoke out against it. So these things are popping up all over the country, guys, and these things are, it's in a way doing something similar to what we just talked about. We've gone over this. I'll go over some points really quickly in a second. Just the points of what they're doing in these places like Spruce Pine, where they're destroying the area, turning it into a desolate place that only these AI data centers can exist, and just absorbing and taking what they can from it. They're doing it in small areas where there's not much pushback. And so she speaks up and says, hey, we don't want this here. And apparently when she speaks up, they don't like that.
This is fucked up. You know that, right? You're not this shit.
Will not continue to be silenced and ignored while our beautiful, pristine city is taken away from us and handed over to a corporation intent on extracting as many resources as they can, regardless of the impact to the people who live here.
Which has consistently been happening. So is that America first to be selling out to technocratic AI centers, or is that about AI and industry and beating China? Like, you can't have both things. I mean, it's possible they could both align if you're doing it in a way that's different than the way they're doing it. But what you're pointing to are things that are hurting the bedrock of this country in a lot of ways, like the same thing you're doing with the farmers overlap or the meat, the things that they were very quiet about, even though during Biden's administration, you're undermining the food supply, and which he was, and Trump's doing similar things. That's my point, guys. During Biden, it was all World Economic Forum, Great Reset. Look at that. They're hurting the food supply, the supply chain. And Trump does similar things. And it's just, oh, well, there's a reason and a narrative. And, it's a choice to see it a different way. And the Democrats aren't even calling it out. Not in the way we should. But anyway, they drag her out. So here's an overlap that I've talked about a lot. This is one location, one of the major ones in Texas. Unquenchable thirst. Texas data center consumes 50 billion gallons of water as state grapples with its own drought. We've talked about this insane amount of water usage for these things and how they continue to, almost create a shortage and a choke point that can be abused. We have this example from Spruce Pine. Now, I want to just quickly overlap the point from North Carolina with the weird theory spin out that happened around the hurricane, which we should always consider. Very real conversations. I've discussed a lot of them around Hurricane Harvey, around weather manipulation, whatever else, the consideration of those points. Not that I don't believe I could prove it at the time, but there were points that I thought were very, very sound. The idea was when this happened, there was a major discussion of the lithium thing, even though very quickly I found out that didn't affect it at all. They already had an agreement. It didn't change anything. So you had this spinning out of the Jones and Benny Johnson tides. But oh my God, look at the lithium. That was it. They organized the weaponized the weather to get the lithium, and which is something that's certainly possible. And then you look and go, well, that's not what happened. But that became but what was weird to me, and you could look at almost the epicenter. It was like the literal reddest epicenter of what that storm was. So if you're of the mind that it was weaponized, not to say that I'm making that case, but if that was your mind, wouldn't it be like right in the center that would be your first focal point? Yeah, and guess what was right in the center? Spruce Pine. And Spruce Pine just so happens to be a very, very worldwide unique place. The world's semiconductor industry hinges on a single quartz factory in North Carolina. It's this quartz fine powder. Spruce Pine's quartz mine restarts production after Helene hits North Carolina mountains. So my point is simply about the fact that what's going on in these places, when I dug into it beyond this, was to find out this town was being utterly destroyed by what these AI data centers were doing to it. Every store is left. People live there. People are just leaving because there is no, it's more, not all absolute. There are people that still live there. What my research has shown is that people are speaking out. Like the clothing stores are leaving. No one's buying. They're ruining the industry of the town other than making it just an empty AI data center driven location where they reap all the resources and hurt everything that would be America, right? Or maybe they want to just turn it into something different, which is the whole point today. But going back to that, wouldn't you go, maybe they did all this to get people out of an area? Because that was the whole thing they were doing. Did they do these things to remove everybody for the Great Reset? And look at that. Come right back to it. It seems this was the most important thing near in the world to the AI thing that happened right afterward. Well, maybe, huh? But you don't ask the team sport Republicans to ever consider how obvious that is, because that doesn't add the AI part of it. Thou shalt not cross. We don't want to talk about that today. It just becomes so obvious. Now, on top of that, the White House put out this presidential AI challenge we pointed to a couple shows ago. I agree with what everyone's saying. This is the equivalent of they do this with schools, whether challenges or, it starts young to get people. This will open the door to young people to think AI is just the way everything's going, which it seems to be the case anyway. It's an effort to get the newest generation to adopt what they're doing. That's what I argue. Now, the military overlap, which is obviously relevant, is something that, imagine this was a Democrat. Imagine it was Joe Biden, for those that only see this from partisan lens. For those of us that are beyond that childish two-party illusion, the idea that we're screaming in the direction of the DARPA AI military future that we've been warning about pretty much my entire career, it should be alarming. Isn't DARPA the one that was overlapped incredibly with almost every alarming agenda with the great? Yes. Exactly. With the shots, with the technology that was used, with all the overlapping AI, all the most alarming technocratic agenda stuff is coming directly from DARPA. They've been planning this forever, like these technologies, technological developments. And so now he's telling you, well, we're working alongside them to create this vision. The AI, as he says, today we're releasing GenAI.mil. This platform puts the world's most powerful frontier AI models, starting with Google Gemini, directly into the hands of every American warrior. Oh, great, because Google's on our side, right? They're not the deep state, apparently. And so, which I'm not even suggesting it's more nuanced than everything, but Google is not a good guy in the essence of what we're talking about, a good company, good entity. Google is one of the most alarming things that's going on in this, be the centralization of information flow. They are part of the problem, which the Republicans were telling you before. Now suddenly Google AI being in the hands of military is what we want because it's the agenda. So you want Google to influence real-time actions of military personnel making life and death decisions. Fantastic. Now, maybe it's benign. The point is that this should be something we criticize if anything we were saying over the last 8 years was relevant. But apparently not.
The future of American warfare is here, and it's spelled AI. As technologies advance, so do our adversaries. But here at the War Department, we are not sitting idly by. Under the leadership of President Trump, America will lead the charge on this technological transformation by revolutionizing the way we win. And that's why today we are unleashing GenAI.mil. This platform puts the world's most powerful frontier AI models, starting with Google Gemini, directly into the hands of every American warrior. At the click of a button, AI models on GenAI can be utilized to conduct deep research, format documents, and even analyze video or imagery at unprecedented speed. Building on the great work of Undersecretary Emil Michael and his team, we will continue to aggressively field the world's best technology to make our fighting force more lethal than ever before. And all of it is American-made. The possibilities with AI are endless. Now, let's get to work.
I highly doubt it's American-made. about as American made as the MAGA-phone that turned out to be made in China, or the Eric Prince MAGA-phone that was made in Israel. Not a joke. I mean, guys, it's that's not what's happening. I mean, you understand where these people are. Palantir is quite literally immersed with Israel as they roll out their AI murder programs, Habsora and Lavender in Gaza right now. They've been using it for a year. So we're talking about the same whether Google or not. So you're talking about military personnel making decisions and talking. You're saying you're giving. So we know that AI has been used to manipulate, deep fake, whatever else. So you're talking about an AI that could be used in real time to mass manipulate an entire military. Now, it may not be that simple, but I'm just simply I mean, we know where this goes. And my point that I'm trying to build toward before I just, kind of give you my general thoughts about where this is going to go is the DARPA overlap. Oh yeah, I've got one more clip here. But just, here's Wired. This is from 2016. Soldiers of the future will be augmented and indestructible. This is from DARPA, guys. This is the overlapping point because all of this comes from this DARPA agenda. So I'm going to play these. This is the decentered clip. Pentagon chief, some U.S. soldiers and Marines will definitely be replaced with autonomous systems. Very interesting.
A quick question on AI. Would you rather to see your soldiers, Marines on the front lines armed with more AI capability or have them replaced with autonomous systems?
I think it's going to be both. I mean, you watch the modern battlefield, it has to be both. The couple companies we visited yesterday and others I've seen, I mean, what AI is doing to 10, 100, 1,000x the speed of sensing, and everything we do on the modern battlefield is critical. But autonomy is we see it in Ukraine, we see it elsewhere, we're learning from that, the Army's learning from that, is a huge part of the way of the future. So it's definitely going to be both.
Interesting. So here is what the other clip said above, or the link. Hegseth also recently met with DoD contractors like Anduril founder Lucky Palmer, who says his company's tech will turn U.S. forces, at least the ones who aren't replaced by autonomous systems, into unstoppable technomancers. That's a quote. I mean, guys, it's like these people, like they're so giddy on what they're doing that they're not even trying to hide how insane this is. Now, this is something we should be concerned about. Lucky Palmer and with his mullet and his Hawaiian shirts, I'm so glad they're the ones influencing what these people are doing as they execute people around the world. Here's an article, Army Technology, Universal Soldier, U.S. expects cyborg troops in 30 years. This is the same agenda. Like I showed you, the Wired. This is DARPA. So let's not forget, scientists accused DARPA of genetically modifying insects for bioweapons. That was 2018. DARPA, the one that's immersed in the COVID-19 overlap. Bats, gene editing, and bioweapons. Recent DARPA experiments raise concerns amid coronavirus outbreak. Or, coronavirus gives a dangerous boost to DARPA's darkest agenda, right? And this is where it gets into this exact kind of manipulation. You can read this. We've gone over this many times in the past. So, is this what you want? Is this what Americans are calling for? I mean, it's right now, it's an interesting thing to think about. Doesn't that matter? Do we want this to be the next step? Whether or not China might succeed, I don't think Americans do, but they're presenting it as if we do. Let's looking forward to some technomancers in the military. So in regard to other examples of this, like the growing of the control grid, Leslie Manukian points out forced biometric identification, as well as an $18 fee if you don't have your real ID to travel. We were warning about this coming. Like I told you, now they're past the benefit stage. Now they're at the penalty stage. I mean, we literally outlined how this would happen. Right? Where at first you get to go to the front of the line. That's literally what they did. Here, you get a special real ID pass. You guys go right through the special lane. Now you get charged if you don't have it. It's like clockwork, guys. As soon it's going to be forced because it's necessary for national security or whatever it is. Forced biometric identification, which is already happening. But they're saying, well, you get paid if you don't have the real ID. Even though real ID apparently is not enough to stop the ICE agents from arresting you, which has happened 3 times, I can tell. This is the Trump administration doing this, she writes, not Biden or someone else. Same agenda, new actors. Please submit public comment here for federal agency or registry, if you want to give your thoughts. I don't tend to think they care about that. No real ID, it could cost you money. We talked about this. I'll include these discussions. This is the one way back from 2024, September, the SAVE Act. Or not September, excuse me. What was it? Hold on, this was July. The SAVE Act, Real ID, and ID 2020. July 9th, 2024. It's all the same conversation, and we made it clear all the way back then. The SAVE Act didn't really accomplish what they wanted. Massey was a part of that, calling out that it wouldn't even matter in the election cycle they were using it for. But it was about getting people to adopt the Real ID point, which now we're here. See? So they just moved aside with this and went in another direction. That's always what happens. But this is what it was about, using the two-party illusion and the election to usher in digital IDs. Going back to 2020, we talked about it all the way back then. The ID 2020 defector spoke out and called what they were doing when they overlapped it with COVID-19 techno-solutionism, when they used immunity passports. Same point. Now they're just doing it for a different reason, but they're all digital IDs. This is one from Derek. Real ID, voter ID, and digital ID, the future of American identification, 2025. That's coming. Now overlapping that with the point of where that has to go to meet their demands. This is November 17th. In the 6G era, 5G towers may become all-seeing sensors tracking people and objects. I mean, this is not a joke. This is where this is going. Almost making their terms and old Palantir a little more valid. This is something that we've known for a long time. We've talked about the real basis for 5G technology. This is screaming forward, even though most people on Trump's side were the ones calling this out and are now ignoring that it's a problem because Trump likes it. Trump wants 6G as soon as possible. Isn't that funny how that works? Where you can be like, this is all bad. And Trump comes out and goes, we love it. Give me 6G. And they go, yay, 6G. The blind followers anyway, which are not the majority in my opinion, but this is one example of the larger, he supports the Great Reset. He supports whatever benefits them, and that's them is not you. It's them is the inner circle. Oh, and here's 2023 going back to the CHD Defender, back when RFK worked with them. Military's expanded role in 5G could lead to mass data collection, tracking, monitoring of U.S. citizens. But I guess that doesn't stop Trump from rolling it in as he's right next to him. It's not Maha to allow Trump to do everything you thought you would stop. Like if I were him, and if you saw it happening, I would be leaving by now. I would say he's using me. It's not what I was promised. Well, so either he's lying or he's been compromised. I don't know what else to think at this point. Trump quietly signs 5G law under cover of coronavirus. Now, I always point this out because it's a good show. Oh, here's actually just the clip of just the segment of the 5G part. It's only about 9 minutes. I cut it into a 9-minute clip. You can watch for yourself. Now, this is what's so fascinating to me on this. I did this show, and if you watch it, it's not really about conflating coronavirus with COVID-19. I mean, obviously, I talk about the potential and how the side effects were identical. It's a valid point. There is even a study that argues they're connected. My point, though, was not about that. My point was about how Trump, using everyone being distracted, rolled out his 5G law. Nobody really talked about that. This video got over 1 million views, and we got censored on YouTube right after that. Like literally the next day. That's how this works, right? Because that's when you're reaching too many people, can't have that. It's okay. We keep you back in that corner. People who know you're there can go look at you. But when you start to truly reach people, we got to shut that down. That's where this is today. Now, that's gotten way worse than 2020. But I'm telling you guys, there was a reason because this is a larger agenda. I mean, the vaccine part of it was clearly something insane. But I think we're starting to see that there was a larger developing agenda that had to do with more than just that. I mean, I even point to what Catherine has to say. Like a part of it is just, she calls the great poisoning. There's a financial element to getting rid of certain people, clearing their debt, their spreadsheet. It's not a joke. Also include Derek's outstanding documentary, The 5G Trojan Horse. Jason Bassler adds, so the same people actively covering up the Epstein files are now building an extremist social credit score for the rest of us. Isn't that America first, guys? Freedom is never extreme. Control is extreme. I love that. Well, here's the article he's referencing. This comes from a document that was actually vetted and published by Ken Klippenstein. Leaked memo reveals FBI plot to track millions as potential extremists. See who makes the list. Now, this should be chilling. You're not going to hear this talked about by any of the Team Sport Republicans, guys. This is both social credit as well as your tracking list of Americans. Investigative journalist Kenneth Klippenstein revealed a leaked Justice Department memo that instructs FBI to begin compiling a list of American individuals and groups who can become potential domestic terrorists. I mean, there's no reason to even consider this unplausible. It's everything. They're telling you. Trump's been saying this out loud. The document, which you could check for yourself, they're actually, the link is in here. I have it highlighted to his actual Substack, but I like the overview the Times Media did of his Substack post. His Substack post was shorter and more to the point. I like that they list off these things. We can show you down here. You'll see what I mean. It says the document was reportedly signed by Pam Bondi. It has, and by the way, I'm going to get into it in the next show, possibly tomorrow after the interview, but we'll see if I have time. Right now, as we saw coming, Bondi is sort of being used as a scapegoat. Cash as well in some ways, but trying to say that, look, we knew it. Bondi was always a rhino. Here's her connections to these people, which, as David Icke points out, duh, you don't think they knew that? This is just clearly being used to try to make it look like Bondi was the secret bad guy. Now it all makes sense. It's what they'll probably do if they have to. And she's one of the easy ones to get rid of right now, her and Cash. But it says, according to, well, she says it has a sweeping plan to identify, track, and investigate citizens based on political and ideological indicators, rather than specific acts of violence. Okay, that not only is that unconstitutional, it's a crime. According to the memo, the FBI is ordered to, quote, compile a list of groups or entities engaging in acts that may constitute domestic terrorism. The criteria almost perfectly aligns with Donald Trump's directive, the National Security Presidential Memorandum 7, or referenced as NSPM 7, which the memo says it aims to implement. The memo explicitly lists categories of people who may be referred for federal scrutiny. According to its wording, individuals or groups may be flagged if they display any of the following. Now, before we list these off, think about what I'm about to read and consider how this encapsulates the vast majority of Americans easily. On top of the fact that what we're actually saying is they're going to scrutinize, investigate, and catalog you if you have ideas they disagree with. That is the most un-American thing in the conversation. Even though it's everywhere today, it is shockingly un-American. I mean, at its core. But I guess this makes sense to people who want to pretend it's America first. Opposition to law and immigration enforcement. See, you can't even disagree with their policy, mind you. Law, just in general, just any law? You mean despite all the unconstitutional laws? Well, that's the very point, guys. They see all of Americans beginning to recognize this problem. That's almost how I was going to frame the title today. That as Americans are, rapidly, what did I say first? As Americans are just growing restless with the status quo, tired, everyone's beginning to see where this is right now. I think that's been clear for a long time. So now your opposition to an unjust law. Oh, guess what? I mean, funny to think about that. Overlap with the claim of, investigating Kelly for saying the obviously correct statement that even Bondi now referenced, that it is just to ignore an unjust law, or legal to ignore an illegal law, order. So opposition to law, you're a terrorist. Extreme views in favor of mass migration and open borders. Well, guess what, Republicans? You're now on the list. Extreme views in favor of immigration. Well, that's half his base. You just added, now you're a terrorist, according to Trump's administration. Told you so. The point of nonpartisan swinging back to bite, this is what we've said every single administration. Eventually, you think it's aimed at your counterpart, it will come back around, even if it's the next administration, but usually not. Adherence to radical gender ideology. Clearly, there was some extreme elements within this. I mean, and that's the parts they were leaning into. But as I was saying, even doing this, even covering it extensively about the insanity of how it was being weaponized and being, targeting children, like horrifying things. And the reality of what those things were doing and the insanity around some of these trans activists. But the point was, there was a lot of people who identify as trans or go through this because they're adults and have the choice to do what they want with their own body, which I personally disagree with, who are not lunatics, who are out there with their own ideas, many of which watched the show and supported my work on it because it was objective and accurate. So to simply say you believe that, you can be that makes you a terrorist, it's not true. It's also not unique to left and right, despite them making that case. But adherence to radical, this just simply means ideas. Now, anything radical, if you want to make the statement, it should be anything extreme or radical. But even that they could abuse. But that's my point. It's not about radical gender. It's about radical anything, extreme anything. Politics, religion, That's where the problems come in. But they pretend like it's only bad when that guy does it, or that group, or that religion. All the rest are okay because it's okay when we're extremist. Anti-Americanism, so now you're not allowed to be against the country. That's actually more supportive than you would think. But if we are not children about this and recognize that it's actual free speech and actual freedom of ideology and religion, then you can be anti whatever you want. Obviously, especially when it's really not what you pretend it is today. Anti-capitalism. Well, that's where this was. Catherine Austin Fitts interview. Reverse Robin Hood. Why has Trump become anti-capitalist? Now, I'm sure people disagree with that, but watch the interview. She makes very valid points about how he is the most anti-capitalist president in history. That's her statement. I'm not even sure if I agree. The point is that the evidence she presents is undeniable. He's doing things that are basically socialist or communist or however you want to frame it. It's not what we're claiming he's going for. Anti-capitalism in general is you can be anti whatever you want, especially, and I don't agree with your financial policy, terrorist. It's just insanity. Anti-Christianity, right? Not anti-Judaism, anti-Muslim, anti-Christianity. That's the only one we care about. So it's just also very subjective. But again, you can be anti whatever you want, including Christianity. And then conduct that may constitute domestic terrorism under internal definitions. Okay, that should have just been the only thing they wrote. Just whatever we say is within this category is what they just wrote. What a ridiculous thing to say. You don't need to write everything else. Conduct that may constitute what we think under our definitions meets that. That's anything. That's whatever we say it is that day. Connections to leadership figures in targeted groups. So again, they go, that thing is bad, therefore now you are connected, therefore you're a terrorist. They've already done that. That's just stupid. Evidence is what's required to make these allegations. Mentions or reports submitted through an expanded FBI tip line. Great. So now anybody with enough people, it's sort of like mass flagging something or using, you can just bull rush it and get them to deem you a terrorist. Now 95 people who are Zionists tell you Ryan's a terrorist, FBI tip line, suddenly now I'm on the list, which probably we already are, just for telling the truth about what they're doing. Any activity linked to incidents from the past 5 years that match memo indicators. Who knows? Actions that result in referral to a joint terrorism task force. Again, self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So we claim that what you did makes that happen. Therefore, that had happened. Now you're a terrorist. Associations with networks identified through all available investigative tools. Again, they decide something there and it trickles down to mean everything else. The directive cites the killing of conservative activist and MAGA ally Charlie Kirk. Yeah, still, as a turning point and orders task forces to map networks inside and outside the United States. Sure as hell not Israel, though. I'll tell you that right now. And they're still using his name for things like this, despite the fact that what they're aiming at was not at all what he was talking about. And I'll include those. This is a great article by Kerry Wedler. The Charlie Kirk hysteria is a blueprint for future political chaos. And she's literally being proven right as we talk because of what's going on. That it will be continually done and used, and it's already being shown. As well as the fact that I've followed up with this in other shows, but was Israel involved with the Charlie Kirk's death? Let's look at the facts. I think at this moment, September 12th, it was a very, that's where the evidence was clearly leaning. Since then, there's been so much more. The text messages that even Turning Point USA has admitted to. And on top of that, right, where was it? All the way down here. I should have just done this to segue. Right there. We might as well. I'm just going to move it over. I don't know why I didn't do that. Criticize myself. So we'll go from this first and then this. I think that still works. I'll move this too. Hope that doesn't mess up the order here. All right. So over the overlap, obviously, talking about using Charlie Kirk. Well, we've talked about this a lot. And I think what this clip, which we've showed you in a larger form, but it's really important. This is shared by Bread and Circus. And he says, Charlie Kirk says Israel's going to ethnically cleanse Gaza 7 days after October 7th. He does. Now, what's more important to me is that he's telling you, not exactly saying it, but outlining exactly what I'm highlighting, that it's Zionism. He's not criticizing the country or Jewish or Judaism. He's criticizing the Zionist aspect of it. Now, listen to what he says. Now, consider this as week one, that they're still using Charlie's name to censor, to manipulate, to go after people they claim are his enemies. Listen to what he says here. And I'm not saying I endorse everything Candace Owens says, but there's clearly weight to what she's saying, and she's proving most of it. And that's spinning people like Tim Pool and the rest, clearly spinning them out. First, what he said here. Oh, it's weird. Weird on that one. I have like a vivid memory of grabbing this, so maybe I deleted it on accident. Let me grab it real quick. So it's simply, while I'm grabbing this, remember that there has been, there's at least 4 or 5 clips that I shared of him, like within the week before his death, where he was saying things that nobody on their side wants to acknowledge. That he was calling out Zion, or rather, I believe it was Zionism. I think it's really clear, actually. I'll make the point in a second. But he was calling out the larger genocide, Israel, the influence on American conversations, and how he wasn't able to say what he wanted. He was threatened, remember, when he went to that discussion. That was admitted by multiple people. Even Harrison from InfoWars said that he tweeted that before this happened, that somebody was basically threatening him. I mean, it's so obvious. He came back. Candace says he was flirting with switching his religion. I mean, who's to say what you can verify in all this? Or I shouldn't say, who's to say whether what she's saying is provable? There are plenty of things that you can, though, within this conversation. I mean, a lot, including the text messages that they tried to deny, where he was saying that this was happening. You know, remember, the being threatened by the Zionist influencers and the Zionist billionaires has been verified. And he was really shaken by that. And all this stuff is coming out, and we still pretend like we don't know what we're talking about here. You know, I think it's pretty obvious what happened here.
Here's the essence of it. The essence is this. This is the closest thing to the Holocaust that any of us have lived through. But
Wow.
the fact is now Bibi and the Israeli
I mean, just that statement alone, that is to a Zionist, you are gone. You know, he just said what we're dealing. Listen again. He's talking about the Gaza genocide, guys.
Here's the essence of it. The essence is this. This is the closest thing to the Holocaust that any of us have lived through. But the fact is now Bibi and the Israeli hard-right government has a mandate.
See? Okay, he's going to pause and think about what he's going to say. He's talking about Zionism. He's not saying the Israeli government or the Jewish population. He's saying the Israeli far-right government. That's Zionism. Now, really, it's the majority of the government, but that's what he's highlighting, is the extremist right, the Ben Gvirs, the Smotrichs, the religious Zionist lunatics who believe that by ending Western society, they bring on the end times. And that's what the people in Trump's administration, who are also religious Zionists, weirdly also think. Square that circle with with America first. But he's telling you that was the problem. I just think that stands out so clearly, because my point always has been that he recognized the actual issue. That's what I believe now, based on what he said before he was killed, that he recognized the Zionism issue, that you could still support Israel, you could still support Judaism, but that Zionism was infiltrating Trump's administration, which he also supported. And then he got threatened by them. He tried to tell Trump not to bomb Iran, that they were trapping him, and he got yelled at for it. Like, he was feeling clearly frustrated. Now, if you are an absolute deceiver and are being paid to lie, that wouldn't have mattered. But if you're somebody who is, maybe being, choosing, be willfully ignorant, maybe you just didn't see it, maybe you were going along until that point came along. The point is that there was clearly a shift here, and then he went across all these shows and told you about it, and then he was killed. Now, remember, he turned down this massive Zionist funding, and then what happened right after he was killed? They got a flood of huge Zionist funding. And now they're being basically run by Zionist Israeli influencers and constantly cheerleading for Israel. Let me just play it all over again. I'll let it play all the way through. It's a short clip.
Here's the essence of it. The essence is this. This is the closest thing to the Holocaust that any of us have lived through. But the fact is now Bibi and the Israeli hard-right government has a mandate. I got to be careful the way I say this. They're going to try to ethnically cleanse Gaza.
Wow. So he was also correct, by the way, because that's what happened. They are drowning in this, guys. So here is Tim Pool. And this is interesting. I don't want to even play the whole thing again. We went over it on AM Wake Up. It's just frustrating. But there's one part I want you to hear in the beginning around the most, what's the adjective you use? I'll play it right now. And then I'll read what David Icke has to say about it. But Tim, if you haven't seen it, has been spinning out about this. He called Candace the C word, which, just being just cruel, it's unnecessary. Like, you can call out her discussions. He's angry and he's yelling at her. Why? Because she's calling out what she sees. Now, whether you think she's being dishonest, which I question too about a lot of different things, is, what the way to look at it is Tim is over here on the Israel's the best. She's calling out Israel. How dare you? And he's lying about what happened to Charlie. And he was killed by the lefties. Like, that's literally what he's still, where's the evidence, Tim? You're just still going with the left-wing terror? Because this guy is an absolute manipulator. And I'm saying that because you can watch him pull punches and lie about the two-party illusion or yell. Anybody tapped in that, I argue whether they know it or not, is a manipulator. But you're talking about the idea that you're selling people on that the left killed Charlie. What are you talking about? Is that because that blue shirt guy was the first? Oh, the lefty, we knew it. And then it was somebody else, but you kept going, which is what happened. Then it became Tyler Robinson, who has completely collapsed in regard to what's going on with that. Has he even testified to being, the claim was that he hadn't said he was guilty or not, but everyone around him said that. And then the conversation just disappeared. What's going on with that? And yet he's able to stand there and go, the left killed him. I mean, you have to ridicule people like this because even if that's what happened, he can't possibly know that with where the data sits right now. So he's choosing to make that the case, like Crowder and like Benny Johnson, like all the rest of them that just crowd into they just jump on what they're supposed to say. I just think it's really important to think about that. And so he is really upset that Candace Owens, who is at this point, I think, acknowledged as the most popular podcaster, which probably bugs him. And he's even threatening to be done with podcasting. He says they shot up his home, which apparently there's no police report for. You could decide whether he lied again about the same kind of thing. Here's the clip, or at least part of it.
Active political assassination, probably of our lifetimes, maybe in our history. The left has faced no serious repercussions.
Yep.
The many on the right are now rallying against the victims of the assassination. Could there be...
Okay. What's the word again?
Political assassination. Most effective?
Most effective political assassination. I made this point on AM Wake Up. Take a second to think about this. Okay, so if it's effective, and your point is that, Tyler killed Charlie because the left wants to kill him. So the argument is what the left is trying to accomplish in his broken perspective on this with no evidence. How is it effective? I mean, what he's going on to say is that the right's going after them. Okay, well, what actually happened, though, was it gained huge political momentum. Turning Point USA was taken over by if you're arguing that what Tyler was trying to accomplish was Turning Point USA becoming this global behemoth more than it was before, that you got more funding and more support, and Charlie's name was used around the world to achieve your ends, how is that effective if what you're claiming is what Tyler did for the left? Now, what was effective, if you're insinuating that Israel killed him, was that he was going away from that. And so something happened that made it change. So yeah, then that would be very effective. It's just a weird thing to think about what he's saying. He's probably just saying what he wants you to hear, but it's a weird thing to suggest. Now, the other point was the most effective in history. Now, again, it makes it more likely that he's just doing what Trump does. The best thing I've ever done in history and every planet that ever existed, just dumb things that are hyperbolic. So what about JFK, right? What about any number of paradigm shifting assassinations that changed the entire countries in the world, or the world for that matter? But apparently this was the most effective. This is just this person is ridiculous. I mean, for a lot of reasons, not least of which is this ridiculous thing, the beanie, wearing a tuxedo with a beanie because you're too insecure about your head ball. I mean, it's just why people support people like this blows me away. I don't know.
Political assassination, probably of our lifetimes, maybe in our history. The left has faced no serious repercussions.
The left, right? The entire left. What are you talking about? You're going to take him to court? What kind of repercussions are you talking about? I mean, genuinely think about this. What are you saying? So the left as an entirety is supposed to be sued? Are you supposed to take them all to jail at the same time? Do you not realize how dumb that statement is? And on top of the fact that it's not verified by anything other than you insinuate it was a left motivation, even though Tyler is seemingly right in the middle. His family is MAGA. There's many examples that there's a Republican leaning, but then he was apparently wearing a mask, which apparently only lefties wear masks. That's not true. And was either living with as a roommate or was in a relationship with a trans person. It has not been proven that I can tell that he was living as a relationship more than possibly just living there as a roommate. They all just assumed that. On top of the fact that, as I make the joke every time about Blair White, Alex Jones, and his weird tranny porn phone thing, clearly not only lefties are into trans stuff, okay? So let's be real about what that is the assumption for an agenda. And he is still, I mean, I don't even see most of the other bombastic people still insinuating that. And here he is spinning out, screaming that the left should be held accountable as an entirety of a thing for Israel killing Charlie Kirk.
Yep.
The many on the right are now rallying against the victims of the assassination.
What he's actually talking about is people who are being critical. Now, look, there are idiots on both sides of the paradigm that do all sorts of stupid things, which they love to then hyper focus on and act like it represents the entire side, which is just the game of partisanship. But what he's arguably talking about are people who are being critical of the weird way that she's acting, of the different things that they've said that are just unnerving and don't really add up with what's going on. But, he's taking a side. It's not about facts for him.
There be a better outcome for the left. Nope. Now, you can make the argument.
There couldn't be a better outcome for the left? Are you serious? You mean aside from everybody suddenly supporting the left, which is not what's happening? Or, this is just a caricature of a conversation. And on top of the fact that it actually is so shockingly in the benefit of the machine behind the Republican Party that it's embarrassing that he can even make this argument. But of course, he's got his yes people are, yep, you're right. Of course, that's right, Tim. You're correct. That's absolutely right.
Argument the left didn't kill Charlie, whatever. They celebrated his death.
Again, the left all celebrate. This is what I said. I can't keep watching. It's just so stupid to me. The idea that you're going to stand there and continue to say that people who in some ways made jokes about it, just like you do constantly about things that you think they're so snowflake about, and apparently there are people out there. I mean, most of Congress came out and said, that's sad, too bad, like very clearly did the old rigmarole they all do. I regret his family and condolences. The idea that they go, the left made fun of him was a ridiculous push from people like the Benny Johnson, Nick Sword, all of them. Push this weird idea that they're out there dancing and celebrating. Yes, there were plenty of ridiculous people doing so. Just like you guys do constantly about things in the left. Partisanship is ridiculous. As example right here in front of you. Here's what David Icke said. The alternative media has become a soap opera that has regressed long ago back into the left-right puppet show to corral awakening people into the political myopia of Republican and Democrat, labor versus reform. So UK, United States. Deeply uninformed, Tim Pool is a classic of a genre and thus plays his part in the stage show. The alternative, in quotes, will not be the alternative in the reality transforming scene until it opens its closed mind to the true scale of depth of what is going on. Now, which he also agrees, as he says, this is not an accident. They're not just missing it. They, in my opinion, anyway. It's clear about trying to keep people trapped. But he goes, I won't hold my breath. But people can bypass the political religious limitations, barricades and diversions, and open their own minds to see what most of the alternative cannot see. Now, what he means by that is the mainstream alternative, as he's made clear in countless posts about this. He goes, or doesn't want you to see. It has long been my experience, he writes, that so many people are far in advance in their awareness than those who claim to be in the official alternative. 100% agree. What he's saying is the same thing I'm trying to point out incessantly. You are all seeing it. Left and right, aware. I mean, everyone is beginning to break through this. And that's why all this transition is coming to play, because we're starting to see through everything. And so what he's saying is all these ridiculous clowns acting like they're the top of the media paradigm, which they are clearly the new mainstream media. But the average person out there, you are. And that's why, like, Alex Jones's audience is eating him alive half the time, because you guys aren't stupid. You know more than they believe. And their kind of flimsy puppet show game is just not working anymore. I agree. Now, Dr. Simon Godek adds his thoughts to it. He goes, I might have been late to the party, but this was the day I stopped taking Tim Cass seriously. This is real, too. I saw this when he posted it. Israel, he says, this is September 2025. Think about that. All this time into a genocide, more documented than anything I've ever seen. He says Israel has literally never done anything wrong because Israel is the nexus of morality. Whether it is good is simply based on whether Israel does it. If Israel does it, it is good. And if you want to pretend that was sarcastic, it's not. That is mind-blowing. No matter what you think, even if you agree, it's not objective. That is whatever, no matter what they do, even genociding, raping people, it's good because they're doing it. That guy is compromised. Now, remember what I mean by that is I'm not insinuating that he knows he's being paid or anything like that. I'm just saying whether he knows it or not, he is on the wrong side of history. And that, like I said before, I think a lot of these, if not most of them, it's whether willful ignorance or not even aware they're being used. My opinion, that's not him. I don't think that's the case, but I'm not ever going to claim I know because I don't. Alex Jones, right? After all we're talking about, here's what he's talking about. Not only supporting the Venezuelan war for freedom, right? Breaking exclusive. General Flynn gives major update on the ongoing deep state color revolution coup. Got to use all three of them for impact, you know. Deep state coup, color revolution against the Trump administration, and issues an emergency warning to President Trump and American people that we all must act now or Republic will be destroyed. Right. You got to triple down into the excess, because right now people are going, you're lying to us. We see it. This isn't the right path. You're destroying everything. Our prices are going up. You're lying to us. You're supporting Israel. You're, just nonstop. And so we got to go back to basics. It's a color revolution coup against the Trump administration. That's it. Nothing more. Be on our side or be on the bad guy's side. Good journalism, right? So it's either side with Trump or we're going to die. Who cares if he's really rolling out the Great Reset and artificial intelligence control structure? Other side's worse, just like Kamala was, probably even. But it doesn't change the fact that both things are going in the same direction. Oh yeah, hold on. I want to forget what I said. Oh, I just did this. I just can't believe you're still doing that. I mean, at this point in time, the reflexive pull into just the large deep state coup. Look, I don't disagree with the larger points of what that might mean in a international globalist Zionist technocratic structure. But the idea that you just keep devolving into the deep state coup or trying to get it. Show me something. What are you pointing to? I wouldn't disagree if you can show something because I know these things, there are powers. It's just about trying to suggest that anything against Trump, whether he's being sued, for crimes he's committing, or being accused of killing people in boats, which he's doing, or breaking the Constitution, which he's clearly doing. They go, it's the Democrats trying to get him. It's deep state. That's it. That's what keeps happening. Show me something. Give me some evidence. I'll report on it. That's not what he's known for, despite the claims. But see, this is what does it say? Live, Free or Die says. Alex has admitted that Q is the CIA. Yeah, as he said that, but sort of like him going, Trump may be the Antichrist, I don't know, but then goes on to support him, right? Alex has admitted the Q is the CIA, while also having Flynn on constantly to tell us that the White Hats are in control. LOL. Yeah, that's a perfect example of how ridiculous these kind of people are. Now, I'll include this show we did back in 2025, January, the fake globalist resistance ushering in the globalist plan. That's exactly this is what we're talking about. Now, on top of that, you got an inside clip. We'll get some Israel stuff to wrap up here today. AF Post reports Donald Trump was caught on a hot mic saying he can't appoint anyone because Republicans are allowing Democrats to run the clock down on his administration. Everyone I've appointed has their time has expired, he says. Interesting. Now, this is talking about the Senate, not about people in his inner circle. But I believe that he's very frustrated with most of them too. But this is about the situation in Congress, and it's about what the larger point is about whether or not this is something that he is it America first or not? If these people are not on his side, again, first of all, his agenda is not America first, but let's say you believe that. If these Republicans are not helping him achieve that, Is this the Democrat deep state fighting him, or is this more about something, just political infighting for personal gain as this empire falls apart? You can decide. Here's the clip.
Hey, Jeff, you agree with me on blue stuff. I cannot appoint anybody. Huh? I can't appoint anybody.
They're unplugged.
Everybody I've appointed, their time is expired. And then they're in default.
That was it. So exactly what it was written as. And it's very clear. I can't appoint anybody. So as somebody aptly wrote, Blackthorn says, the math exposes the game. If you have 53 seats and still cannot move nominees, the obstacle is not Democrats. It is your own leadership and your own willingness to confront them. Trump's real problem is that he keeps treating disloyal Republicans as partners instead of opponents. Until that changes, the calendar will always be his agenda. Now, here's what I read from this. It's not about left and right? This is not about him choosing to. This is the fact that he is in line with the agenda that is not about this country. So he's not, and I think most of them are in the same boat in one way or another. And so he, in one way or another, is working for this disjointed sort of, all the things we talked about today. And so he has to make it seem like Democrats are stopping the agenda that he wants, but he's not even trying to accomplish what he's telling you he is. So we're being played. Now, remember what I was telling you about the vetting process as we get into the final, last few points here about Israel and their infiltration, as well as what they're currently doing. This is from November 25th. I've already shown you this. Identity verification processes broke down during Trump government transition. Yeah, it's one way of putting it. This is from biometricupdate.com. Routine background checks and credentialing steps were delayed or bypassed. Well, gee, what does that mean? Well, that means people who are literally working for a foreign government could be in his administration, which is, by the way, kind of always what I think has been going on. But this is so the point to where you could have people who are the evidence that would have come out with a briefest of investigation by this would have shown what they don't want you to see. And so this is, either way, even more than just that, things that I probably can't even think of. These people were not vetted properly. And look at what's happening. Look at where we are. We're being sold out and the world is shifting under our feet. I talked about it all the way back in January. The Trump administration's missing ethics pledges. I still can't see anybody else who even made a point about this. I'm sure there's somebody out there. As we get into what I was saying earlier about the whole Orlando Hernandez and Prosper, as I showed articles today that went back to way before I was talking about it. And I hadn't seen those and I was looking for it, which just shows you the broken nature of the search engines today. But the point is that there are always people out there talking about it. Not just because I don't see him doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But you tell me. I'm blown away by how big a deal that could have been. Why weren't Democrats screaming about that? And they hate Trump and this deep state. Well, because they're not actually fighting each other, if you really understand that, because I think both of them are working to let Israel destroy our country. But here is what Elon Musk had to say. Raising a foreign flag is treason and should result in immediate deportation. Right? This one is simply pointing out people in Berlin with Syrian flags. How dare people who are, at least from the U.S. perspective, I can't speak to everyone in the crowd, but American citizens who happen to be Somalian or these different overlaps. The point I've already made about Minnesota, it's 1% of the population, yet he's out here screaming about the fact that they've used that to take over the country or the state. It's an illusion. They're lying to you. And on top of that, I'm going to go into it in a future show. That clip they're circulating about what she said about Somalians to take over the country, it's a lie. It's very easy to prove. You can, if you choose to actually look up the actual translation, it's not true. But we'll get to that later. But it overlaps briefly with this point because that's what they're always pointing to, right? And you know where this is inevitably going to go. But in the U.S. or in here, so if these people are citizens and they're wearing a Syrian flag, if they're born in Syria or their family came from Syria, why is that a problem? It's only a problem because a bunch of lunatic Zionists and other racist bigots are trying to create the idea that every one of them are invading the country. When in reality, the earnest aspect of that I can prove stems back to Israel in the first place, which is not hard to verify. I've already talked about the weaponized migration and how they're over here screaming for the rabbis or people in their Congress or Knesset about how this has to happen, that they have to flood the West with immigration to get what they want. And yet we still can't piece this together. But look, the idea should not be ignored. Any people could be, but it's about the law. Are they breaking the law or not? No. They're allowed to wave their flags. They're allowed to believe where they're from. And so it's insane. But of course, Eli Jacoby is the guy who just got caught lying about Christmas in Israel when he was pointing to a Palestinian parade. These people are dishonest, man. It's very clear. And she says, Syrian did this all over Europe and London and Berlin, raising their flags. Question is, why are they even here? Their reason for fleeing is gone. Return home. You guys are disgusting. They really are just bad people, whether they even realize it or not. What is wrong? Why is it so bad? Like, just cut to the chase, because this is not my focus today. But it irks me. And this is not about saying that it's not about left or right. There's very clearly a middle ground here where you can be a human being and not just be disregarding of anybody brown from a foreign country while pretending like it's a totally different story when this South African immigrant is in the same situation, but he happens to be white. You just can't deny what is really driving the conversation. He writes, raising a foreign flag is treason. Immediate deportation. Okay. As Chris Rosani points out, if this were the standard, almost everyone in U.S. Congress would be deported. Okay, maybe you think it means differently when it's on the wall. It's ridiculous to pretend like that's not insane. Okay, here you go. How about that? Hassan Mafi responds to the same point. Well, there's all these different American politicians waving Israeli flags. Deportation, if he's going to actually be honest about that. But that's not what he's saying, you understand? He's trying to deceive people. Okay, well, how about the point of the infiltration discussion, right? So before we get past that, I'm just kind of using these points to make the larger point. What's that say? In case since it came up. President Trump just revealed the U.S. forces have seized. Oh, yeah, we already read that. But this is frustrating for many reasons, right? I mean, they do the same thing with many of these different politicians. Trump degrades them in front of people, derides them, talks about them like they're stupid, like they're disgusting, they're Somalia, nobody even exists there. They just kill each other all the time. Well, maybe it's because you guys have very clearly kept that country destabilized. But again, future conversations. It's just insulting for them to even make these arguments. Walls was literally caught using Telemessage, which is an Israeli intelligence app that archives the conversations they were having in Signal in the inner circle. And let's not forget, their internal investigation just found that there was no issue. But they focused on the Signal aspect and not Telemessage. Surprise, surprise. Or the fact that we just talked about this from the gray zone, former Israeli spies now overseeing U.S. government cybersecurity. It's insane. Jason says the same thing. Nothing to see here. Axonius, founded by ex-Unit 8200 Israeli spies, runs cybersecurity for 70-plus agencies in the United States government. Army, Navy, Air Force, Homeland Security. Totally normal, right? This is, guys, what do you think that looks like? An occupied territory. The Pentagon, Treasury Department, DHS, and a variety of other U.S. government agencies have begun relying on a firm launched by former Israeli military intelligence. On top of that, we just discussed this. Smartphones worldwide silently infected with Israeli spyware. It's called Intellexa. It was a huge conversation. Amnesty International did an entire report about it. But surprise, surprise, you don't hear a peep about that from the new media, from the corporate media, from any of them. As Seven Seas points out, this is actually, we knew this regarding the AI overlap, but it, on top of the fact that the genocide in Gaza, that they were involved with the Lebanon part of the pager attack, it's just kills me. Palantir's entire business model, he writes, is empowering genocidal terrorists who call themselves governments. Instareal used Palantir, or Israel, used Palantir's tech during Operation Grim Reaper when they maimed and killed scores of innocent children and civilians in Lebanon. Palantir's involved with the act of using a pager attack that killed mostly women and children. They're also involved with an ongoing genocide where they constantly, and they still stand by what they're doing. These are the people that are involved with building the world that we're going to live in, building your surveillance network state that we're currently living in. It's just insane. And don't forget, Netanyahu even gave Donald Trump a special pager. Press with both hands, it says. I'm telling you guys, these are threats. Just like the 50 states one Israel is a threat, saying that you all have a piece of Israel in your pocket. The Mossad, ex-Mossad guys saying that we have this kind of technology in every country in the world, telling you that they're manipulating supply chains for their favor. They're telling you all of this. And it's not just the United States. German state parliament approves use of Palantir police software. But don't forget, though, according to Alex Jones, it's just a tiny little thing. And if you believe it's more, you're obsessed with Israel.
Is interesting. I'm more concerned about this suite of companies, though, like Palantir, which is they're feeding all of the data over to Palantir so they can manipulate it with algorithms, and they're everywhere. They're looking at the wastewater during the COVID pandemic.
So you're back to this. I've looked at the scale of Palantir, and it's tiny compared to DeepSeek and all these others. And
it's not, though. Like, you can make a point about different funding aspects. What Palantir is doing is above and beyond anything we're talking about. Not only are they also creating AI platforms and programs, they're conducting worldwide global operations. When the U.S. government alone is a massive behemoth of a surveillance network, which, by the way, when this is done, I'll point to the images he also shares showing you that. Do you think, okay, there's only one or two things in this moment. This was a while ago too, not months, when he was deflecting at this point. You could prove he was wrong. So you have to ask yourself, is he lying about this for a reason, or is he this bad at his job?
And Chat GPT, and I'm not like defending Peter Thiel. I'm just saying it's like I get it from the liberals and the Israel obsessed, whatever you want to call it. So just Palantir.
They have an enemies
right. So you mean your audience is telling you to talk about it because it's important? Yeah.
List. They have an enemies list of 2 to 3 million people that they've identified as potential violent extremists. And this.
Yep. And guess what? They're doing it now too. You want to guarantee you that's involved with what we're talking about right there. The same network they're using. If they're looking and scanning in this country for extremists with the information they have, they're using Palantir to do it. That's already been shown for the ICE overlap.
This is being run by Alex Karp. Alex Karp said his biggest fear is that Christian nationalists will take over the government and throw him out of a window, defenestrate him because he's Jewish. He's running Palantir. Palantir has an enemies list of 3 million people.
So Alex Karp doesn't like you?
I don't think so. I don't know him, but probably not.
But you don't want to throw him out of a window?
I don't want to throw him out of a window, but I don't think...
Yeah, way to completely not engage with the information and not make it into a joke. See how he did that right there?
He should control Palantir. I don't think he should control military procurement. That's my concern. And Peter Thiel, I mean, he's a suspicious character also. He says he's a Christian, but he's a gay man. He says he's a Christian, but he's really involved with this Rene Girard, who's sort of an interesting philosopher who's involved with a lot of the Straussians out there at the Hoover Institute. So these are two guys I don't...
Yeah, Karp's got a degree, basically, in classical Western civilization.
But what is Western to these people? You know, according to Harry Jaffa, Western means protecting Israel. And that's who they're all.
And van der Leyden said that too.
Right. So ultimately, Alex seems to be clearly defending those people, regardless of what he was trying to say. Like, he's got you're taking the side, So at the end of the day, remember what he did right there. Remember how clearly he tried to bury that, and it didn't work. It came up more than once in his conversations. As later, I think a couple of weeks later, he got frustrated on the air about people that just wouldn't let go of Palantir. Look at where we are. You got to start making notes of this stuff, guys. Now, on the point of Christianity, I do think it's relevant. Not exactly the way he was framing it. Doesn't just because somebody is gay does not, in my mind, make them not a Christian, despite what many people may say. At the end of the day, you can believe you are what you want to believe you are. My point is about the genuine belief, not necessarily whether I think it meets my definition. If you're out there believing that's your, like, my point is, do you think he believes he's a Christian? Do you think Jones or Trump, do you think they believe they're a Christian? Because what I'm going to show you next is important, because this is what the Zionists this is a Zionist rabbi, a Zionist Jewish rabbi, who is telling you that he believes Christianity is a joke. It's not a secret. Look, they spit on Christians in Israel streets, and yet here they are defending this. So the point about the overlap is important, because I do believe that these people are gaslighting us into like, right now, the Christian right's important to them, both for Israel as well as the agenda because of what's going on in power. And so that's why Elon Musk and Thiel and Meta, we're libertarians, we're tapping into what you believe in. They don't believe in any of this stuff, not as far as I can tell. So here is what at least this Zionist Jewish rabbi will tell you, and he's a very prominent academic. He's telling you that he thinks it's ridiculous. And this is not unique within the religious Zionist discussion.
Christians, when they came out with their book, the New Testament, right? So they have 4 major books there: John, Luke, Mark, and Matthew. And therefore, they came up with their book, called the New Testament. Needless to say that the first Christians who come to write a fake book, and that book has to comply 100% with the 24 books of Judaism, lechatchila, to begin with, the mission is impossible. Impossible. Even if you took the smartest Jew in those days and give him such a mission, remember there was no Google search engine, the Torah disk, none of that existed. He had to have all the knowledge in his head, which we know that there's no people like that. That's why the New Testament is full of mistakes. You cannot count the amount of human error there. Thousands of human errors. If you watched my debate with a Christian professor, 3 hours debate, I can only tell you how it ended. He drank 17 bottles of water. You get the point, I hope. So, you know, why is it? Because it's not his fault. The religion he represents is a man-made fake document. Therefore, there are so many mistakes. How dumb it could be! That's Christianity. 2 billion people follow this nonsense. Christmas, lights, Santa, all of that, fake illusion.
Wow. Now, if we're going to, I mean, if he's not smart enough to recognize that Christmas and Santa are not Christianity, but the modern materialistic consumerist kind of adaptation of it, then he's not the smartest person. Then he shouldn't be listened to if he's a smart person. I think he's just trying to belittle it and I think he's got an agenda. But as the clip shows you, before we get to that, as the clip shows you, as you can see, it says, don't show this to Americans, in particular the Christian right, who believe that this is somehow from the Bible. These people laugh at you. And I'm not saying that as this is what you can look into it for yourself and recognize, like we said, spitting on Christians or Israel pretending like, or there's so many points we could get into. So if you understand that, and what I believe is that's largely a Zionist Jewish perspective, not just any Jewish person in the world, it's insulting. And these are the people we're talking about. These are the Teals and the Carps, and even people like Alex Jones or Donald Trump are you can argue they're saying something else. That's the side they're on. Look at their coverage. Look at what they're doing. Look at the punches they're pulling. And you could argue they don't even know they're doing it. I'm not trying to say that I know they're doing one thing or the other. It's about the outcome. Look at what they said. Look at what they're doing. The intention, you can decide. But these people are on that side of the agenda. It's just insulting. And it's not about a religious thing. I mean, it's about them in the religious conversation, but for me, it's about dishonesty. It's about these people trying to tap into what they know you believe in. And if you just get wind of what's really happening, it'll kind of just blow up the entire illusion. And I think that's what they're very concerned about right now. Now, let's do this really quickly since this just came up while I was doing that before we finish with these last few points. Look at this. Pete Hegseth's, it looks like New Republic. Pete Hegseth's own AI bot backfires on his boat strikes. Check this out. On Tuesday, which was yesterday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth unveiled his department's new AI chatbot, Gen AI Mill. Almost immediately, the bot called a hypothetical situation where the government orders a strike on a suspected drug smuggling boat and then double taps the boat to kill every survivor unambiguously illegal. Oops. Because it is, guys. There's really no error in the conversation. And even their new chatbot just told you they broke the law. But yet, I'm sure they'll alter that. Get ready to join up with Grok and Elon Musk. He'll show you how it's done. Anyway, back to the point to finish. Talking about Israel, well, let's just wrap up with some of the realities going on. Let's not forget, and this is as of the 9th, Israel remained the leading killer of journalists in 2025. And we're not even just talking about Gaza journalists, guys. One of the first ones they killed was a Reuters journalist when they bombed close to the border of Lebanon. I covered that right in the beginning of the conversation, and not even Reuters was able to really report that for a few days because they were afraid. Here's a point Max Blumenthal highlights. Well, Jasper Nathaniel points out Ben-Gvir. Well, look at the new pin they're all wearing. And look, these are the most extremist people right here. The Ben-Gvir and Smotrich types are insane. And this is the inner circle. And this one's Amichai, he's the heritage minister. Ben-Gvir and friends are wearing a noose to signal their support for executing detainees, clearly designed to look like the yellow hostage ribbon at first glance. That's heritage minister Amichai Ilihua, how do I say his last name, on the right, who oversees the ethnic cleansing of Sebastia. Okay, so realize what we're talking about here. As Max writes, now that the hostages, in quotes, are out of Gaza, Israel's replacing the yellow ribbons with a pin that signals its true future intentions to transform its vast, what is it again? I always say it wrong. Archipelago of prison camps into extermination centers. I mean, it's just so, it's been this way the whole time. From the very beginning, they came out and told you, Amalek, kill them all. And then the people we just went through today gaslit everyone they could. They're still doing it, whether Biden or Trump, left or right. How do we miss this? So aside from the infiltration of our government, these are the people who are openly, proudly out there killing everyone they can, raping, torturing, and murdering while accusing everybody else of doing that. And they're laughing about it. They're wearing pins telling you that we're going to kill everybody else. They're advocating for that. It's just so over the top. On top of that, this is the last point I'm going to make, is that this is where this is going. Those people are in charge of putting this stuff into the world, this campaign against anti-Semitism. Hamas is building the capacity for terrorist attacks in Europe, including the UK, with weapon cache. Absolute nonsense. Now, I mean, this may be something I get into more if this truly becomes an actual claim. But guys, this is the dumb. I can't believe there's nothing that makes this make any sense. Not only actually, I'll let Susan make her point at the end, which is going to be similar to what I'm going to say. So Caitlin Johnstone simply says, I'm so sick of having my intelligence insulted like this. It really is this is only promoted by largely people who know it's not true because of their agenda. My opinion. The Jewish Chronicle. It's come out in every single possible one you could imagine. It says, high likelihood that Hamas will attack Europe in the next 6 months. Don't forget, we've already had the same allegation from Jones and others that there was going to happen in the United States. What's her name? I'm blanking on her name all of a sudden. Also somebody who made the exact same claim that Hamas is going to come into the southern border and so on, right? Richard Medder says Hamas doesn't operate outside of Palestine and never has. That's provable. Doesn't mean they can't, but there's zero infrastructure or evidence to make that make sense. On the other hand, Israelis have a history of terrorism all over the planet. This insult to people's intelligence should be met with a reciprocal level of contempt. Moronic garbage. Now, of course, is it possible that Hamas could join with some outside force and do that? Of course it is. But it's about standing back and looking at the bigger picture and look, like he said, there's a mountain of evidence showing you how they've literally done this and lied about it over and over and over. There's not a single evidence or there's not a single event or evidence to back up the fact that Hamas is or has or even would or capable of doing that. Simple. It's just discernment, guys. Susan, same thing, says, looks like Mossad is planning another false flag. Hamas has never attacked anyone in Europe, never expressed a desire to do so. And in fact, it's always made it clear that they are fighting the Jewish supremacist colonizers and oppressors on their own soil, who even they have gone back and made it clear that we're talking about the Zionist power that is overlapping with Jewish supremacy. That's not a secret, but it's the Zionist part. And they've made that very clear. Now, you could argue they're lying about that to hide their true intentions. Certainly possible. Goes on to say, and in fact has always made it clear that they're only fighting the supremacist, and it says in their own soil, in their own homeland of Palestine. Watch out, Europe, she says. Israel's coming for you again. And yet another false flag on your soil to whip up anti-Arab, anti-Muslim sentiments. Here's a partial list to jog your memory, not including the ones we know they did but can't yet prove. The Lillehammer Affair, 1973. Embassy bombing, 1994 in London. Targeted assassinations using forged passports all over the world. The Levant Affair, Egypt, 1954. And we've covered most of these. You can prove this stuff, right? Look it up for yourself. So I'm not going to say that I can prove that. I can't. Who knows? But with what we just covered and what's going on, I'm worried about the need for, like Donald Trump even said a while ago about the need for a new 9/11 type event to bring everyone together. They've made that kind of reference. Or we're going back to PNAC and Pearl Harbor. Like, this is what they do. So considering that this may be something that this, about some large thing that opens the door for this to be shoved all the way in. I hope not. But my job is to bring the information, to aggregate it as best I can, to make it look, to give the, well, to put it simply, I have the way I think, the impression that I get from it. And I do present that clearly. But the point is for you to get the source material, to review it for yourself, and to come to your conclusion about what it shows. Consider what I'm saying, but also consider what you think it looks like. Don't just take my word for it. So my job is to bring that information together. So hopefully we can be better informed when these things do happen and not just fall for the first trap they throw in front of us. So thank you again for being here. You continue to break this stuff down as best I can. But you know what I think, guys? I'm very concerned about where this is going. And I've felt this from the moment I saw that. And it's only gotten more and more clear. So just, you know, when you're in this kind of mire, this maze of partisan nonsense, take a step back. Especially if you're an honest person and are capable of doing so, take a step back. Go to basics. What do I believe? What are my principles? What do I care about? Not what they're telling me I should, or the narrative that makes it make sense. What, just at the core value, what am I trying to accomplish? What do I believe in? Right? What are my principles say? And then fall back on that. Even if it feels like it's, not the, like with Trump's telling you that it makes more sense this way, if that feels like it's the harder path, usually the right thing is. But just fall back on what you know is the right thing to do. That's not to say it's always correct, but sure as hell going to guide you in a better path than technocratic globalist Zionists trying to convince you of what they want for their benefit at your expense, which is our entire history. So thank you for tuning in, guys. I appreciate your support. Please let us know what this means to you. We need your support every day. I love you all. As always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.